All right, everyone. Welcome to the SSMU Legislative Council of February 25th, 2021. I'll begin by calling to order at 18:06. Moving on to item 2, the land acknowledgement. The SSMU acknowledges that McGill University is situated on the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee nations. The SSMU recognizes and respects these nations as the true and constant custodians of the land and waters on which we meet today. Further, the SSMU commits to and respects the traditional laws and customs of these territories. Moving on to item 3, attendance. When I reach your name, please just say here present or any similar or any word of similar nature. As well for, thank you very much, Councillor Smith. I will let them in now. They should be good. Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. With that, all individuals who are serving as proxies, when I reach the name of the individual you are proxying for, please indicate that you are a proxy, say your name, spell your name for the purpose of the minutes, as well as indicate your personal pronouns if you choose to do so. And so with that, I will begin with Councillor Collins, Arts.
Present.
Thank you very much. Councillor Crossick, Arts.
Present.
Councillor Smith, Arts.
Bonsoir, Madame la Présidente, je suis ici.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor Williamson.
Present.
Councillor Litvina, Arts and Science.
Present.
Councillor Mulvaney, Athletics.
Present.
Councillor Awan, Clubs.
Present.
Councillor Lee, Dentistry. Councillor Bullhose, Education. We do have a proxy, so I'm just going to wait. Justin, I think we are having...
Yeah, my microphone was muted.
Yeah.
I apologize. Justin, I am a proxy. My name is Justin, Justin, Liao, Liao.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much, Justin. With that, Councillor Kirksu, Engineering.
Present.
Councillor Reed, Engineering.
Present.
Councillor Page, First Year Council.
Present.
Councillor Councillor Bonin, Law, is, I believe, absent. Councillor Gunderman, Management.
Present.
Councillor Kunzen, Management.
Present.
Councillor Wan, Medicine.
Present.
Councillor Kodadati, Music.
Present.
Councillor Morgan, PTOT. Councillor Fernandez, Science.
Present.
Councillor Sood, Science.
Present.
Councillor Zhang, Science.
Present.
Senator Daryanani.
Present.
Senator Parsons.
Present.
Parliamentarian, you marked the wrong marked Councillor Morley.
I think you also skipped Councillor.
Yep. Councillor, Councillor G, my apologies.
I'm here.
Thank you very much. We will go to Environment.
Present. I'm a proxy. Camille, Camille.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Sorry, last name, Camille?
Clement. Clement.
Thank you very much. Residences. Councillor Nelson.
Present.
All right. Councillor Morali.
Present.
Councillor Drew, Social Work.
Present.
SSMU President.
Present.
VP University Affairs.
Je suis ici.
VP Student Life.
Here.
VP External.
Present.
And VP Finance.
Present.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we will now move on to item 4, adoption of the agenda. The agenda has been distributed. Are there any corrections or changes to the agenda at this time? VP Finance.
May we add report of the funding committee to the agenda?
We'll add that now. Thank you very much, VP Finance. Are there any other individuals with corrections or amendments to the agenda at this time? VP External.
Yeah, I'd like to postpone the 10C motion regarding a policy on harmful military technology until the next session.
Okay. To the two amendments brought forward. Seeing none, they will stand approved. Are there any other individuals? Councillor Gunderman.
Just a quick question. So are we postponing this motion because of new amendments to the motion?
VP External.
Excuse me?
Are we postponing the motion because of new amendments to the motion?
We're postponing the motion because, broader context, the motion was rejected by the Board of Directors last week. The steering committee made some recommendations, some recommendations regarding sourcing for some of the factual claims in the policy, and the drafters of the motion haven't had enough time to address all of the recommendations.
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any other individuals with corrections or changes? Councillor Gunderman, is your hand still up, or do you have another point?
Nope, I'm good, thanks.
All right, seeing no further individuals, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Jeffrey.
Thank you very much. Can I have a second?
Seconded Collins.
Thank you very much, Councillor Collins. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the agenda will stand approved. Moving on to item 6, announcements. All individuals with announcements can raise their hand at this time. VP Finance.
Hey everyone. So the 2021 Awards of Distinction applications are now open. So if you know anyone who you think deserves the award, it's for $2,000, and it's designed to recognize students who've demonstrated a combination of strengths in both extracurricular activities as well as academics at McGill. All information can be found on the SSMU website, but if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me or the funding commissioner. Tell everyone to apply. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, VP Finance. Are there any other individuals with announcements at this time? Seeing none, we will move on. We will next move on to question period. With that, we do have a submission from Senator Darianani. Senator Darianani, would you like to read it yourself?
Sure. Read what appears on the screen. Yeah. The question is directed to the President. In April 2020, the Legislative Council approved the creation of the Ad Hoc Committee on Diversity of SSMU events under the SSMU President portfolio. The next step indicated that an events researcher has to be hired and the committee's research would be presented by fall 2021. So the question goes, has there been any progress on this? If yes, what is the progress? If not, why hasn't there been any progress?
Thank you very much, Senator Darianani, SSMU President.
Yeah, happy to answer that. So I guess the first thing is, no, there hasn't been any progress on that. The reasoning is multi-fold. So the first thing is, I think the report or presentation was supposed to be given for fall 2020, not fall 2021, but I was only informed that this position should have been hired in August of 2020. Given that there were other things going on with COVID, lack of a VP internal to help supervise this events portfolio, and also no events because of COVID, it got postponed. So it's definitely still on the radar, but in terms of priorities, there were other things that superseded it, as well as trying to find space in the budget as well. So the position will be hired within this cycle of SSMU hiring, with the work hopefully being done over the summer to still try and meet the fall 2021 report deadline, but that might need to be postponed until later in the fall semester, depending on how much work is required to fulfill the report.
All right, thank you very much, SMU President and Senator Darianani. We'll next go to Councillor Gunderman, Management.
I have a question on the motion regarding the adoption of the Divest for Human Rights policy. So certain amendments were made to the motion last second, and I didn't have the time to review these changes to the footnotes and also to the content of the motion. So I was wondering if it's possible to postpone or table the motion in order for us to properly review it.
VP External, I'm going to inquire what the nature of these amendments were, because from my understanding, there were friendly amendments that were going to be put forward, but they haven't technically, they shouldn't have been included yet. So I'm just wondering if you can provide clarification.
So the question from Councillor Gunderman is regarding amendments that have already been made.
Councillor Gunderman has noted that there are new amendments that have been made, and assumably that would be new amendments since the motion came from the General Assembly. And given that steering committee didn't make amendments when it reviewed it for Legislative Council, I'm inquiring as to what these are, considering that amendments, even if they are friendly, they're going to still have to be moved from the floor. They can easily be accepted, but they shouldn't be added into the motion before they've been moved.
Yeah.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, Councillor Reid.
These were amendments that I submitted to the organizers and the movers of the motion a couple of days ago between today and the GA. So I would be happy to introduce the amendments, of course, after the original one is proposed, if the movers are okay with that as well.
Okay, I will ask Councillor Gunderman, would that be more acceptable to you?
Sure, but we just need to change the motion, I guess, back to the original.
Yep.
I'm on that.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Gunderman. Are there any other individuals with questions at this time? Senator Darianani?
I would just like to point out that the amendments that Councillor Reid proposed were not accepted as friendly for the motion. So the amendments are actually different to that. I'm not sure if that changes what we're going to do, but I'd just like the council to note that they're not the same.
Are we referring to the amendments of the human rights policy?
The amendments were discussed with the Divest team, so I believe that they were accepted in a modified form. So I'm proposing that I would bring forth those modified amendments that the Divest team said they would consider as friendly. That's what I'm referring to.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Reid. Councillor Awan, Clubs.
Yeah, Councillor Reid, I guess I'd just like to make you aware that the coalition asked me to propose the amendment, so I'll be doing that at the start of debate.
That's okay. Thank you, Councillor.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Awan, for the clarification. Are there any other individuals with questions? All right, seeing none. With that, we will move on to item. Sorry, that was my apologies. We missed the report of the steering committee, and so I'm just going to present that now. Let me just pull it up. All right, so as usual, welcome everyone to the Legislative Council. So the steering committee met last Friday, February 19th at 2:30 p.m. EST. Everyone except the governance manager was in attendance. We had no guest speakers that meeting. We also had no new business. For business arising, we had 3. Now we will have 2. There will be no presentations for this evening's Legislative Council, but we do have a generative discussion. For steering committee innovations, we're just noting that once again, much of the same rules that I reminded everyone of Legislative Council last time will be applying for this time as well. So noting that I have the authority to strike amendments, amendments of motions that are substantive and extensions of time. I have the right to strike those out of order. I can also strike individual statements out of order if they aren't relevant to the conversation, if they're leading anything of the sort. As well, just to remind everyone, we're going to be doing default debate and default question period of 5 minutes each. If you need an extension, you can certainly entertain it, but just in terms of not letting it go ad libitum, we're going to practice a 5-minute threshold. As well, I have the right to refuse refuse motions to extend if I believe that they have outlived their usefulness, and for example, if the proceedings of the meeting are beginning to repeat itself. As well, once again, we're not going to be doing extensions ad libitum because that's not the best precedent we want to set, and we want to keep the Legislative Council proceedings moving efficiently. There will also, lastly, not be a confidential session this evening. Are there any questions on the report of the steering committee? All right, seeing none, with that, we will move on to item 8, generative discussion. VP External had moved this, so VP External, you can begin with just a background.
Yeah, just before that happens, because this generative discussion is going to require the presence of the SSMU political researcher, who I believe is in the waiting room. Would it be possible to admit? I think the name is, like the Zoom name, maybe Bradley Por, P-O-R.
Okay, we will admit them now. Perfect. All right, VP External and Political Researcher, you can take it away.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. And so I'm just going to check. Bradley, are you here in the Council Zoom session?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so hopefully all of the councillors kind of recall what this Censé Electoral Reform presentation was about, which was now 4 weeks ago, 2 council sessions ago. So basically, like, the context is just that the government of, or rather within the National Assembly of Quebec, there is proposed a bill to implement an electoral reform away from the current first past the post system to a mixed member proportional a mixed member proportional system. So we had a presentation by Censé, which in English stands for the National Student Solution for a Fair Voting System, basically outlining the the government's proposed electoral reform and some of the Censé's recommendations. And so the political researcher will go into the recommendations in a bit more detail, and we'll be here to kind of answer any questions and just kind of be a source of insight for the for like any questions that councillors or members of the gallery may have. But basically the fact of the matter is that this electoral reform that has been proposed, which has the support of all of the major parties except the Parti libéral du Québec, the Quebec Liberal Party, is almost certainly going to pass in one form or another. And so it's primarily going to be a matter of what this electoral reform looks like. And so the Censé has a series of recommendations that I have shared with all of you quite a while ago. Some of which are I suppose more kind of significant than others, including, for instance, the last two, that the referendum on electoral reform be held after the mixed member proportional voting system has been used for at least 2 elections, and also that the referendum on electoral reform be held separately from general elections. And so if you're like all of the councillors here will you'll all have received like those recommendations, and you can go into your email accounts to look through them a bit more, or to refer back to them this evening. And so the Censé the kind of the standard resolutions that the Censé proposes that student associations adopt are: one, that the student association be in favor of an electoral reform to implement a mixed member regionally redistributed proportional system in Quebec, and then secondly, more specifically that the student association support the Censé in its actions towards electoral reform. So these are all things that I would say are very important for us as the council of the SMU to discuss and sort of engage in and decide what we want to how we want to orient ourselves and the SMU as a whole regarding this issue. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess I will leave it there for the time being. And if there are any people interested in speaking, including Bradley, yeah, the floor is open.
All right, thank you very much, VP External. With that, I will entertain all individuals wishing to speak on this. I'll just note for reminders that you have a default of 1 minute of speaking time. So all individuals wishing to speak on this can raise their hand at this time. Going to offer another opportunity, all individuals wishing to speak. All right, VP External, I can't see anyone wishing to speak at the moment. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
I guess maybe I would say ask the political researcher if he would like to just kind of speak a bit to some of the details, either technical or more practical, regarding the proposals of the Censé.
Sure. You can hear me, right? Yeah. Yeah, I haven't done intense research on this, but I do have some background in this area, and just as the External noted, the motions that, first of all, the motion supports the Censés. So what you're voting on isn't necessarily to support each of these points directly. So I think actually, and I think particularly on the issues, the points about gender parity and equal representation, there doesn't appear to be there seems to be work that needs to be done on the government end, and then to build that out. So that's something I think SMU could discuss kind of in terms of have a deeper discussion on. But the referendum point I think is really important. And if anything, I'm speaking about this as someone who's from British Columbia, where we've had 2 referendums on electoral reform that have both failed. One I guess last year, and then one about 10 years before that. And so this is Quebec is bringing this forward, that history of failed referendums. And so I think this is a very, very important, because it's kind of been demonstrated that this is not a referendum question that has much success, and the results of what happened in BC was people, whether or not people really were opposed to electoral reform is not so clear, because most people just really didn't understand what they're voting on. The first time around, there wasn't so much information on the ballots. People were I don't know, let's stay with first past the post. 10 years later, the government took another approach, which failed pretty badly, which was to have a 2-part question, where there was a question on, do you want to change the system, yes or no? And then there was a pretty detailed list of different systems you can choose, and there were packages sent to people's house to actually do low-key research on electoral systems, and that did not work very well. And almost everyone I talked to that didn't have a political background said they just kind of felt like they felt uninformed, but I think, actually being informed, but I think it's when you try to give people the technical details on electoral reform, it's like, it's, if you never looked at this in your life, you're not just going to suddenly feel like, oh, I understand electoral systems. So this is actually, I think, a really important point, because I think without the referendum, if there is a referendum held up front, I think that history shows it's likely to fail, and it's not necessarily reflective of what people chose. So I think this is I think that's a really important thing, given the history in Canada. Also, like, the government has a mandate because they said that they would implement it. Those are the main points. And then, like, the original, I think the first point on their list is just to actually make it a proportional electoral system, because rather than what is seen as sort of a watered down one with this winner's bonus, and I won't go in, that's fairly complicated stuff, but in the way of like assigning the regional seats, so what the Censé is proposing is actually more reflective of proportional representation. And then really it just becomes a debate about debate about democracy, what is a more democratic system, and does having seats more aligned directly with people's votes, is that a more democratic system? I mean, I think it is, but that's the debate that needs to be had, and in the history of these debates is that when it gets more technical, people disengage, and when it's more to the point about like democracy, then people are more engaged. So that's kind of my general overview of the proposals.
All right, thank you very much. Bradley, are there any individuals wishing to speak on this at this time? Councillor Krosick.
Ok, donc quelques semaines après qu'on a eu personne de Sens qui a donné à nous une présentation. So when he gave this presentation, I brought up a question that I knew had been brought up quite a bit by people who were concerned about the MMP motion, which is that the specific way they're implementing MMP will give significantly less proportional support to the island of Montreal than already exists beforehand. Even though it still does it by population for the other half, it still evens out to overall less. And the response I got from the researcher was basically, well, it's better than first past the post in general, so it's good. And I never really got like a full response of like, does Sens really have a response to this in terms of like, do they have a plan to try and put an amendment to try and fix this, or are they just okay with it as it stands? Because if so, I guess I would still have some concerns, even though at the core I do like MMP.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Krosick. Are there any other individuals wishing to speak? I'm going to ask one more time. Are there any other individuals wishing to speak? All right, seeing none, we will move on to item 9, recess and consent items. I'm not going to explain what consent items are because I think everyone has a good enough understanding. I will open up the consent vote momentarily. For the purpose of the one that we've postponed, motion regarding a policy on harmful military technology, if you leave that blank or if you want to click anything on that, you can. I'm not going to consider it tonight, but just note that whatever you vote on it, it doesn't matter since it's postponed. But with that, the consent items forum has been opened. All right, everyone, and with that, we'll call Legislative Council back to order at 1841. I will just announce that no item passed by consent vote, and so both items on the agenda will come to be scrutinized, debated, questioned, and voted upon this evening. With that, we will move on to item 10, old business. We will begin with item 10A, motion to amend the internal regulations, motion regarding amendments to the internal regulations of elections and referenda 2021-02-11. And with this, VP Finance.
Didn't I motivate this last time?
Yeah, you're very much correct. With that, we will move into question period. All individuals with questions can raise their hands. Seeing no individuals with questions, we'll move on to debate. I will just let the DEO arrive in case anyone has questions. All right, I'll just ask one more time if anyone has questions on this motion. Seeing none, we'll move on to debate. All individuals wishing to take part in debate can indicate so at this time. All right, and at this point, I'm also just going to remind everyone that a consent vote, if you wish to participate, if you vote debate on a consent vote, that means that you are wishing to participate in debate, or you believe it's worthy to debate, and there's actually something meaningful that you believe needs to be discussed. I don't see anyone wishing to take part in debate, so I would caution against people voting debate if they truly do not think an item is necessary for it. Nevertheless, seeing no individuals wishing to take part in debate, we will move forward with the vote. With that, the voting form is now open, councillors. All right, I'll give everyone 15 more seconds. All right, with that, I will announce the closure of voting. With 29 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstention, the motion has been approved. With that, we will move on to item 10B. Motion regarding the adoption of the Divest for Human Rights policy. Before entertaining this, I'm just going to explain for all individuals at the General Assembly. You will note that this was already approved at General Assembly. However, it was approved in a consultative forum, meaning that the decision taken was not binding. And in order for this to go through, it needs approval by the Legislative Council. From individuals who have reached out to me, I'm going to note that this, since it was already moved at the General Assembly, and is not a Legislative Council motion in creation, it's a motion of the Legislative Council in the fact that it's appearing at Legislative Council, but it wasn't a motion intended for the Legislative Council, nor was it intended drafted with the Legislative Council in mind. So the specific provisions regarding Legislative Council motions in terms of second readings or readings of policies don't apply. This has already been read at the General Assembly. I will also note that the organizers, who will be recognized as the movers of the motion, they are eligible to accept amendments. You are also able, so that's not only discussing friendly amendments, but if any individual is wishing to move forward an amendment, I should say all voting individuals wishing to put forward an amendment, there is the ability to do so. As well, I'm going to note, I will once again be ruling out motions to divide the question. This will not be appealable. If you could, just in line with what happened at the General Assembly, the point still stands. I'm not going to go into that now. If we can go, if anyone wants clarification on that later, I can certainly read you what I've been sending to everyone concerning that to email. But that being said, that's just to preface this for individuals who are having trouble understanding the position of this motion within the society's governance right now. With that, I will move forward with a motivation. VP External, either you can motivate or you can yield to one of the other organizers.
Okay. I'm not sure to whom I could yield my time, so I'll just go. So as all councillors will be aware, this motion regarding the adoption of the Divest for Human Rights policy was approved at consultative forum overwhelmingly just last week. I mean, you all know what the motion, what's in the motion. This is a motion to expand SSMU's commitment to social justice and human rights by adopting a campaign, a divestment campaign regarding several companies at, that McGill University invests in. I guess I would note that, the significance of the policy being, or rather of the motion being approved last week by the consultative forum, the significance of the fact that the quorum was reached at General Assembly last week, and then lost as a result of a mass exit, and that after that exit, the result was 90% vote in favor of this motion. I think that that's a very important thing to consider in going forward, to debate and to ultimately vote upon this policy, the motion rather. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Juan, I'm just going to note that going forward, if you want to bring a point of order, you can raise your hand. Councillor Juan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to raise a point of order. So Section 7.4 of the Internal Regulations on Governance states that the minutes from a consultative forum shall be circulated to the Legislative Council and uploaded to the website before the meeting of the Legislative Council designated to consider matters of the GA. So I don't think this was done with the past General Assembly. So I just wanted to ask if the steering committee was aware of this. Thank you.
I was aware of this. I'm going to defer to the governance manager. The governance manager is going to be joining us momentarily. With that, can I have a motion to enter into a 5-minute recess? Thank you very much, Senator Daryanani. Thank you very much, Councillor Won. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, will. All right, everyone, with that, we will note the arrival of the governance manager and we'll call back to order at 18:57. Governance manager, I've briefed you with the information, so if you'd just like to reply to advise Legislative Council, you may do so.
Sure, no problem. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me well? Okay, awesome. I'll take that as a yes. Thank you, Speaker Hill. Okay, hope everyone's doing well. Welcome back to our meeting of Legislative Council. So, okay, so it's been brought to my attention that there was a question that was asked in regards to minutes of the General Assembly. So yes, that's absolutely right. However, the GA took place last week. The recording secretary is in the process of transcribing the minutes. So we do have a 2-week kind of duration to prepare the minutes. However, I will note that all legislative councillors that are here today and any members at large that attended the GA as well, councillors are all required to attend General Assemblies. So if you were not there or if you send regrets, it's usually best practice to consult at least the recording or the live stream to kind of know what took place. Additionally, if there is an issue and you don't wish to proceed with voting or debating this motion today, if you want to wait for the minutes from the consultative forum that took place last week, the council has the prerogative to postpone this as well. So I'll just leave it at that and let me know if you have any other questions.
Right, thank you very much, Governance Manager. With that, in order to entertain a motion to postpone, we will require a mover and a seconder, but I'm also just going to note for legislative councillors, I understand the IRs, but I also will understand there's a significant volume of people of student society members at large. Moving it to postpone could potentially cause increased inconvenience, as well as the fact that, like the governance manager said, all of you at the very least should have attended the General Assembly or consulted the recording. Furthermore, I'm just naturally going to assume that the bulk majority of the individuals currently within the bulk majority of the members of the gallery have also attended General Assembly. And so while it is procedural, I would encourage everyone to only postpone if they truly believe that the minutes are helpful, rather than simply a procedural wishing to account for a procedural difference. With that, I will ask, is there a motion to postpone?
Motion to postpone.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gunderman. Can I have a second? Seeing no individual wishing to second, the motion to postpone has not been entertained. With that, we will enter into entertainment of the motion once again. So we're just going to note that individuals wishing to ask questions, they can either be directed to the VP External or the mover. And so in this case, the mover representative will be Maya Garfinkel. As well, I'm going to note that we have a default 1-minute speaking time. I will be tracking, and once you've approached, for members of the gallery and for councillors, just a reminder, when I approach 15 seconds until your time has elapsed, I will knock once. After your time has been elapsed completely, I will continue banging my gavel until you stop, in which case I will then either ask for you to finish, for you to wrap it up then, or for an individual to motion for an extension on your time. But with that, we will now enter into question period. So all individuals wishing to ask questions on the motion can indicate so. Councillor Gunderman.
Yeah, I have a question for the mover of the motion. So I was just wondering who was consulted when putting together the motion.
Either Maya or VP External.
I can take this, and then VP External, if you'd like to add anything on, that would be great. In consultation for this, we started very organically. The different corporations that are listed in this policy and the human rights violations that are also mentioned are coming from interests that McGill students have already had for campaigns and organizations that already exist and already thrive at McGill. So this initially started organically with the organizations that started here. And then as we expanded and were constructing and developing the policy, we expanded to consult with other groups on campus concerned with the issues at hand. For example, we expanded not only with Divest McGill, but from Divest McGill, we moved into consulting with CJAM and other environmental organizations, just as an example of how this developed. As we consulted beyond that, I know in the last week or so since the GA, we have also consulted with representatives here, as well as others who wanted to talk more about specific elements of the policy, and so on and so forth. So we've begun as an organic thing within McGill's own organizations, and then we've expanded beyond to the representatives, and we have made adjustments from those, and we really appreciate the contributions that those representatives have made in this development.
Great, thank you very much. Maya, VP External, do you have anything else to add?
Sure, thank you, Madam Speaker. So, pointing to the consultations completed section of the motion, it also indicates that at the suggestion of the steering committee, consultations were conducted with the governance manager, the president, the communications manager as well. And also prior to that, those suggestions and the first review by the steering committee, the motion was reviewed and endorsed by the SSMU's equity commissioners.
All right, thank you very much. VP External, Councillor Gunderman.
Just to follow up on that question, was anyone from the McGill administration consulted, or perhaps some human rights expert, like a lawyer, for example?
Maya or VP External?
Sure. Nobody from the McGill administration was consulted. No one like a lawyer was consulted. As for human rights experts, sources and testimonies of human rights experts are cited within the policy appended to the motion. So while there wasn't a direct consultation with, say, a human rights expert, the contributions of human rights experts exist in numerous places within this motion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maya, do you have anything else to add?
I was just going to say that in my understanding, there is precedent for passing policies such as these. I know that the policy against harmful military technology was not brought here, was not able to be at this legislative council, but it was approved at last legislative council, and we weren't questioned on whether we had consulted with McGill administration or human rights organizations when we approved that policy. So I just wanted to point that out, that just a few weeks ago, legislative council approved that policy. Although these are not the same exact policies by any means, they both deal with human rights issues, complicated definitions, and definitely contentiousness. So I just wanted to point that out just as a reminder, as I was a part of both policies. So I'm intimately familiar with the consultation processes for both. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Maya. Councillor Mulvaney.
I just have a quick question about Section 4, the mandates. It says that the society's advocacy will utilize as much social, political, and financial pressure as necessary. I was wondering if somebody could please elaborate on the financial pressure and how any fees raised from the society would kind of go towards this motion in practice.
Order.
VP University Affairs.
I think that the policy that's being displayed on the screen was the version before the changes implemented following consultation with steering committee, because I distinctly remember that the preamble of section 4 was removed.
That is correct. Parliamentarian, would you?
That's a good question. I also remember it being removed, but this version is from after steering. So let me look for, I'll look back on my emails, and I'll get back to you.
It should, parliamentarian, it should be in the General Assembly. Should be in the General Assembly drive. So if you want to make it,
I'll make a copy. I'll refer to it and make sure that one is correct.
okay. Councillor Mulvaney, would you be okay if we came back to you?
I would be okay with that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. With that, can I have an extension on question period?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you very much. VP University Affairs, for how long?
Shall we say 5 minutes?
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williamson, is there any opposition? Hearing none, the 5-minute extension has been granted. Councillor Reid.
Thanks so much, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the movers of the motion. I'd just like to ask specifically the VP University Affairs and the VP External, just how well equipped the External Affairs and University Affairs infrastructures of SSMU are to sort of handle what this motion is calling for, whether there's going to be additional demands in the next year, and what can be done to bolster that effort in the future.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Reid. Either VP External or Maya.
Yes, sorry, just for clarification, the question is, to what extent is the University Affairs and External Affairs, like offices, to what extent are they prepared to take on this advocacy mandates?
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, in fact, Councillor Reid mentioned at the General Assembly, I think, just sort of issues regarding like the External Affairs office being understaffed in certain respects. I'd say that with respect at least to speaking about the External Affairs portfolio, the political campaigns, the political campaigns portfolio of the External Affairs office is very well developed and like is the most developed of all of the different portfolios within the External Affairs office. Is well suited to take on broad tent coalitions, especially divestment especially regarding divestment at the university. Like there's a pretty strong history and understanding of that, of the tactics and the orientation and just the strategy generally that kind of requires. So I can speak only for External Affairs.
All right, thank you very much. Maya, if you have anything to add. Okay. Parliamentarian, can you confirm that this is the correct motion yet?
I have to separate them because the Section 3 amendments are there. So I'm just pasting the sections after 3.3.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Parliamentarian. Councillor Bond.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I've noticed the public Facebook announcement regarding the SGA motion. It was issued by an organization other than SSMU, at least a week prior to the GA. However, the motion itself wasn't included in the original GA agenda and was a motion from the floor, as I found at the night of the GA. Was the motion reviewed by the GA steering committee prior to the start of GA? Thank you.
I'm going to note that this question was answered by the General Assembly during the by the steering committee during the General Assembly. For the record, the motion was reviewed multiple times prior to the General Assembly. During the General Assembly, the steering committee also took part in a recess to review it once again. So I believe that this motion, including our last steering committee report, the motion has been reviewed by steering committee 4 times now. Are there any other individuals with questions? Councillor Krosik.
I was just wondering if it was possible to like motion for like a short recess so that the parliamentarian could finish putting in the amendments.
Yep, that would be quite helpful. Thank you very much, Councillor Krosick. How long would you like it to be?
Wing, how long do you think you'd need?
2 minutes is fine.
All right, let's say 3 minutes.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Krosick. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, we will call Legislative Council back to order at 19:15. With that, we'll move back into question period. So we will begin with VP University Affairs and then return to Councillor Mulvaney.
This is actually just a procedural question. Since it seemed as though the parliamentarian was copying the changes from the GA document to this document, would it be easier for us to just like send a clean copy since we have, or to copy it like the entire document from the GA? I'm just worried about missing changes.
No, if I can address that.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's fine. I just checked it. It should be fine. And yeah, it just the problem was because with the GA, you're not allowed to copy the document itself. So we just have to do it manually as well. But yeah, it should be fine.
All right, thank you very much, parliamentarian. Councillor Mulvaney, you can feel free to just ask your question again.
I'm not sure if my question still applies because the part that I was questioning has now been edited out.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Councillor Mulvaney. With that, are there any other individuals wishing to participate in question period? Senator Daryanani?
I'd like to ask the VP University Affairs to address the question earlier. I think it'd be good for Council's knowledge to understand the workings and the resources of the VP UA.
VP University Affairs, I'm going to give you discretion, given that it could be struck. That question could be struck out of order, given that it's not on the motion. It's up to you if you'd like to entertain it.
Yeah, I believe it was in reference to, I think this might have been Councillor Gunderman's question, or anyway, it was a prior question that was on the capacity of the external and UA portfolios. So I believe that it was just asking about the capacity of the UA portfolio to fulfill the mandate of this policy. Yeah, and I'm happy to speak on that. I can say that, I mean, personally, I had a fairly big hand in assisting with the drafting of this policy. From my perspective and my experience working with the university and the Senate caucus, I do believe that this mandate is pretty well within our capacity in terms of the kind of mobilization that we can do on the university end. Like, frankly, it would, like, it's a similar kind of advocacy to what we've already been doing for environmental divestment and divestment from fossil fuel industries. It would just involve expanding the scope of corporations or industries that we're asking McGill to divest from. So really, it wouldn't involve a much larger workload or really the addition of many new responsibilities. It would just be about expanding the scope of work that we're already doing.
All right, thank you very much, VP University Affairs. I'm going to need, Councillor Krosick, I see you have your hand up, but I am going to need an extension on question period to entertain it. Can I have a motion to extend question period at this time?
Motion to extend by 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Senator Parsons. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mulvaney. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the 5-minute extension has been granted. Councillor Krosick.
All right, so I'm actually kind of curious about this. I know it's been brought up in the past, and I know there is an ongoing effort to work towards divestment. I'm curious, actually, because I don't know if it's ever been like, I don't think we've, at least for like a little bit recently, gotten an update. What is the current progress towards divestment looking like, actually? Like, how close are we? How's it looking? Have we made progress recently? That kind of stuff.
I'll either take that VP External or President or Maya. VP External, is your hand up to answer or to ask a question?
Oh, sorry. It's up to answer the question.
Hey,
yeah, just firstly, like, does this, so is this a question about fossil fuel divestment, like campaign?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, sure. It's not really.
It can be,
related.
yeah, it can be struck out of order, but it can be struck out of order if there's a desire to answer it, you can, but it doesn't pertain.
Sure. Nonetheless, I mean, the last kind of, so the university rejected the last, or voted not to divest in December 2019. Like, there was a big sort of between fall 2018 and December 2019, there was a big campaign because that was the duration of the Committee to Advise on Matters of Social Responsibility's third study of fossil fuel divestment. Since then, well, okay, so the decision not to divest from fossil fuels in 2019 also came with the decision to like decarbonize the endowment, which would include divestment from some fossil fuel companies. Since like then, the Divestment Guild and other organizations have continued to put pressure on the Board of Governors. But yeah, I mean, it's not, students don't always have like the most leverage on oppositional issues such as divestment. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'll say.
All right, thank you very much, VP External. Are there any other individuals with questions? VP University Affairs?
Would I be able to add to the answer to the VP External? Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I would also say that everything that the VP External said is completely true. Students do not have an incredible amount of leverage. I think what we're doing in this policy is leveraging all the momentum and resources that we have, or as much as is responsible to leverage. But I will say that while, of course, like divestment has, like total divestment from fossil fuel industry has not been attained. I mean, if it had been attained, you all would have heard about it. I can say that there has been progress on the university end, as the VP External mentioned. I think one recent commitment from the university was carbon neutrality by 2030. And while, of course, like that's not the ultimate goal of the Divest McGill campaign, there is movement. Like we have like both, I guess like both personal experience and like documented experience that supports divestment as an effective course of action, an effective strategy to achieve an ultimate end. And while, of course, like our ultimate goal in terms of fossil fuel divestment has not yet been attained, we are making movement. Like we're making progress. And I have no reason to believe that we won't make progress under this policy as well.
All right, thank you very much, VP University Affairs. Councillor Reid.
Much, Madam Speaker. Sort of on the vein of my last question, the mandate of this motion extends 5 years future. And I think that there's, to a certain extent, a bit of a problem in SSMU towards making sure that we can maintain our when SSMU execs leave and are replaced by others. Can the VP External and VP UA comment on the sort of infrastructure we have for making sure that efforts that occur on a 1-year basis can actually be extended to a 5-year basis despite turnover of multiple executives? Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Any individual wishing to reply?
Sure. I mean, on behalf of the External Affairs Office, political campaigns, the relationship between the VP External and political campaigns is that the VP External is the executive responsible for political campaigns, or responsible for being the liaison between executives. Like, it's just the executive among the executives who has like the institutional connection to campaigns. The VP External is not the person who leads campaigns. Like, the people who lead the campaigns are the student groups, the 8 or 9 of whom actually formed a solidarity coalition and mobilized to get over 350 people to attend a General Assembly for the first time since 2017. That wasn't the work of the VP University Affairs or the VP External, and it never really has been. The executives are administrators and like not organizers. The organizing comes from the student groups, the student organizers, as well as the student staff. So in this case, the mobilization coordinators and the campaigns coordinators and other casual staff within, especially the external affairs portfolio. So that's kind of that's the relationship between like the executive, the VP External, and political campaigns. So I understand that it might kind of look as though turnover, and sure, yeah, it's definitely true that the VP External's turnover year to year has some impact, but it's not kind of the VP External is not the primary actor in the society's affiliated campaigns.
All right, thank you very much. VP External, are there any other individuals with questions? Seeing none, we will move on to debate. Before moving into all individuals wishing to raise their hand, we'll just first note that we have a pre-recorded statement provided from a group on campus. And so before moving into anything else, we're just going to entertain that video. Following that, we will move into debate.
Can everyone hear it?
No.
Okay, let me just replay it.
Unfortunately, many Jewish students cannot be here as tonight marks the beginning of the Jewish holiday of Purim, so I will be representing our community. We support legitimate efforts to promote human rights and social justice. Unfortunately, this motion creates a false and misleading parallel between the complex Israeli-Palestinian conflict and human rights concerns worldwide. The clauses about Israel and Palestine will only serve to undermine the rest of the resolution in which other countries are incomparable. The anti-Semitism in these clauses is shown through its anti-Zionistic elements. These elements are blatant attempts to delegitimize Israel, a safe haven for the Jewish people. The people who are advocating for the policies in this motion are the same people who last year denounced Israel's right to exist in this very council. The clauses about Israel in this motion are part of the larger boycott, divestment, and sanction movement. The ultimate goal of BDS is not to change Israeli policies, but to end Israel's existence. This is a fundamental violation of SMU's commitment to leadership in matters of human rights and social justice. While I cannot speak for all Jewish students, I can speak for the mainstream Jewish opinion. We have feared for our safety due to an increase of anti-Semitism following the many anti-Israel occurrences at McGill. Jewish Canadians form 1% of Canada's population, but we're the target of nearly 20% of all hate crimes in the country, according to data released in 2020. Just a few weeks ago, a known BDS activist from Concordia vandalized swastikas on a synagogue and was found with gas canisters and explosives meant for the synagogue when he was apprehended. This terrified McGill's Jewish students, as this synagogue is an integral part of our community. SMU should be looking out for the safety of its students above all else. The adoption of such a motion will further jeopardize the safety and well-being of students on our campus.
All right, with that, we will move into debate. We're going to note, as usual, 5 minutes to begin, and I will entertain further individuals. To begin, Councillor Smith.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Madame la Présidente, le préambule à la Constitution de notre association dit que l'AUM s'engagera à faire preuve de leadership en matière des droits de la personne, de justice sociale et la protection de l'environnement. Pendant les dernières quelques décennies, l'AUM était un leader en la promotion de ces valeurs exprimées en notre Constitution sur le campus et autour du monde. C'était grâce à nos efforts de notre association et de nos membres qu'on a déjà convaincu l'administration de céder les investissements en Afrique du Sud contre l'institution d'apartheid, en Myanmar pendant la période de le régime militaire et en les compagnies du tabac. En investissant en les compagnies comme Lockheed Martin, Remax, Oshkosh, Puma, Foot Locker, Nordstrom et Kohl's, l'administration démontre que leur seule priorité, c'est leur portfolio d'investissement et non l'implication de ces compagnies en les injustices contre les personnes marginalisées. Madame la Présidente, nous, comme les student leaders, on a besoin d'envoyer un message à l'administration que ça suffit. Pendant les derniers quelques jours, j'ai reçu plus de commentaires en faveur de ces motions que toutes les motions qu'on a discuteront cette année. On a tous vu les discussions à propos de la motion qui est devant nous ce soir sur Facebook et Instagram pendant les dernières quelques semaines. Madame la Présidente, les membres de l'AUM veulent comprendre cette position de leadership et moi, je suis en accord avec ça. Selon moi, cette motion est une bonne addition à la cadre qu'on a effectivement créé pendant les dernières quelques réunions de ce Conseil. Cela va nous aider, comme les student leaders, en la promotion des valeurs et priorités de notre organisation et les membres. Madame la Présidente, moi je suis totalement en accord avec cette motion. et j'encourage les autres councillors de me joindre et voter pour cette motion. Merci.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. With that, we will move on to, Councillor Wan.
Thank you very much. I have a prepared statement to read. So last week, I attended the SSMU 2021 Winter General Assembly in my capacity as the medicine representative.
Councillor Wan, I meant to say Councillor Wan.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so just before we continue into further debate, I'd just like to present these friendly amendments that you guys can see up on the screen there, just so we can debate the final motion that we're going to be voting on. So yeah, as was mentioned earlier, these are friendly amendments. They were drafted in conjunction with the mover and the seconder and the rest of the Divest coalition. And they're also relatively minor. They don't really change the substance of the motion, just sort of expand upon descriptions of two of the companies that are named. So I'm just going to quickly mention what they are and then give brief reasons as to why they're being presented. So the first one in section 3.2.2 concerning remaps is to strike the phrase defined as a war crime and replace it with prohibited. So the sentence reads prohibited under international law. The reasoning behind this was just that the coalition felt while the label of war crime can definitely be accurately applied to Israel's actions at times over the last few decades, according to the UN and the legal opinions of the UN and certain NGOs. We just felt that it may play into the trope of Palestinians being a party to being one of two parties with equal power in this conflict, which the coalition felt definitely wasn't an accurate representation of Palestinian oppression. So for that reason, we just decided to emphasize the illegality of the actions under international law rather than calling them a war crime. And then we added the adjective systematic in there, just to better describe the intensity of the violence in the sources that are attached to this motion. So that's 3.2.2. And then for 3.2.3, we've added the sentence there that you can see on the screen. And so these amendments were also informed by the feedback that the coalition got since the GA. So this particular section just better situates Oshkosh Corporation's complicity in the military-industrial complex and also their role in providing vehicles to the U.S. and Saudi Arabian militaries. So we felt that was important to highlight as well. And then there's, I think, 3 additional sources, if the parliamentarian could scroll down a bit, that are just sort of referencing that. And they're very matter of fact. Councillors can look over them, but like I said, it's a grand total of 2 sentences, very minor changes, and the friendly amendments, I certainly don't think that they warrant a postponement of the motion at all. Yeah, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Wan. And so I will note that these have been approved ahead of time. I'm going to confirm with the movers, are these amendments acceptable to you?
Oui, j'adore.
All right, thank you very much.
Point of parliamentary procedure, were there any footnotes that were removed?
There were not.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Wan. With that, we will enter back in to debate.
I think it's parliamentary inquiry. I'm sorry. So I'm just seeing that there's another highlighted section under section 2 interpretation. I was wondering if that was also an amended section that needs to be gone over. Thank you.
If I could speak to that,
Yep, parliamentarian.
I believe that was from before, but it was highlighted before the session, so I'm not sure, Speaker, if there was a reason for that.
No, that's the parliamentarian. If you can just unhighlight that section.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you very much. So seeing the movers accept it, just to clarify, Just because something has been accepted as friendly does not mean that further down in debate, individuals can't amend that, like move to remove it or anything like that. That's not what a friendly amendment is. It's simply to, accepting a friendly amendment means it isn't subject to debate right now. It can come up for discussion later, however. With that, I will move on to now Councillor Juan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I apologize for speaking out of turn previously. So continuing on with what I mentioned earlier, I will be presenting a short prepared statement. So I attended the SSMU 2021 Winter General Assembly in my capacity as the medicine representative, a SSMU director, but first and foremost as a student member of the SSMU. I was caught by surprise when I first found out about the motion that very evening, as it was added to the GA agenda once the meeting had already started. The motion had not been published in advance. As such, I did not have time to carefully read and understand the motion myself, nor was I given any opportunity to consult with my constituents, nor with the MSS, my faculty association. I personally believe that this motion could have been presented in a different manner, specifically with greater transparency and advanced public notice. I have subsequently discussed this matter with the MSS over the course of several days, which included an emergency general council meeting. In particular, the MSS political positions policy passed at our fall 2020 General Assembly, which states that the adoption of official political stances beyond certain narrowly defined topics requires consultation via referendum or GA, would have been violated. Ultimately, we came to a decision in the form of a mandate for myself as the Med Rep to vote against this specific motion at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Juan. I'm just going to clarify momentarily. For individuals familiar with the General Assembly, you'll note that it was moved from the floor because this motion went through numerous stages of revision between the steering committee and between the committee, between the organizers themselves, which is why it was moved from the floor. Also, just note, for individuals who voted at General Assemblies, you don't vote in your position as directors or councillors, you just vote in your position as student society members. It's all the same. It's not like council where I publish votes. It's all the same. You're just considered as student society members. But with that, I will move on to Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Speaker. While I understand the importance of SSMU's mandate to be a leader in cultural, social, and environmental issues, many of my constituents mention this as a reason for being inactive and disillusioned with student government. They are frustrated when they see most of their representatives' time being taken up by hot-button global issues when it feels to them that the issues they face on campus, such as a lack of support for sexual assault survivors and inadequate mental health resources, seem to fall by the wayside. While I understand the causes mentioned in this document are important, one of them has been repeatedly debated and is known to be inflammatory. And this is why some of my constituents are tired and confused as to why our student government continues to divide our campus. With the inclusion of Israel in this motion, it serves to harm our campus while fueling further injustice and conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. Divestment against Israel has been tied into a resolution about divesting from human rights violations in other countries around the world. I support the valiant efforts to promote human rights and social justice, particularly in places where they are in jeopardy. Unfortunately, the clauses that focus on Israel-Palestinian conflict attempt to create parallels between Israel-Palestine and other human rights concerns worldwide that do not exist and are harmful to imply. I believe the current language about the conflict does not do justice to Israel or Palestinians and will only serve to undermine the rest of the resolution. Additionally, the amendments added last minute seem to be an attempt to move away from the focus on Israel, which feels hypocritical as the movers claimed that they were not targeting specific states but felt the need to amend this particular portion. Finally, in the impact of this decision section and of the motion, it states, "This policy shall not be interpreted as justification for racism or xenophobia of any kind, including but not limited to anti-Asian racism, xenophobia, and anti-Semitism," and again restates it in the interpretation portion. Such a statement feels performatory at best and has no action or accountability to ensure that this motion is not used in such a way. While it is a nice sentiment, it is only that and provides no real support to the communities mentioned above. For these reasons stated, I will be voting against this.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Williamson. I am going to note that we're going to require an extension on the time. I'm going to note that I'll take up to take a 15-minute extension?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Very much. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the 15-minute extension has been granted. With that, I will move in to Councillor Lee Dentistry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to further share my experience within the past this week regarding on this motion from my constituents within the Faculty of Dentistry. After the GA assembly, I received several tremendous amount of emails regarding on this motion and on the stance of within our faculty as well, and that led me to launch a survey regarding on it to kind of have a better grasp of what my student body was standing on for this motion, and majority stand against it, and there were several testimonials that I wanted to kind of share, and one of them was a lot of the testimonials kind of highlighted the fact that this motion claims to be targeting infringement upon human rights around the world. However, it disproportionately focuses on Israel-Palestinian conflicts, singling out Israel as a nation. And what I wanted to also focus is that while Israel-Palestinian conflict is a simple one, many of them believe that should this motion be passed, it gives the SMU the freedom to put forward anti-Israel and BDS ideas, which will further marginalize Jewish and Israel students on campus. And in addition to that, many of them had concerns about the unsafety of themselves going to campus with this motion being passed, as several incidents had happened within Montreal community regarding on this kind of issue. So based on these reasons, I'll be going against this motion, and I just want to further highlight these voices that may not have been fully heard within the General Assembly. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Lee. Councillor Reed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to address some of the comments that have been regarding the more controversial components of this motion, specifically 3.2.2 and 3.2.3. Now, to speak on this motion as a whole, having been brought forward by a coalition of our campus's most foremost advocacy groups and being considerably debated and consulted about already, I do feel that this motion has reached a point where it's reached considerable debate and had considerable tune-ups to it, to a point where I feel quite confident in the wording of it. The debate here centering around some of the background research about RE/MAX and Oshkosh Corporation are questions about wording. They're questions not about what the policy does, but about some of the sentiments that are expressed. And ultimately, as councillors, I feel we have a responsibility to look specifically at this motion and look at what it does. We have a responsibility as a group to contribute towards an effort to uphold human rights around the globe. That is precisely what this motion attempts to do in terms of its actual action items. And as a focus on that, I do believe that we should be voting in favor of this motion and passing it, as the divestment of the institution to which we as students pay fees is a tangible use of our power as SMU in order to better the lives of both our students and people around the globe. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Reed. Councillor Gunderman.
So this is a very content-heavy motion, so I have quite a bit to say. I also prepared a written statement, so I might need an extension of my time. So the resolution aims to demonstrate leadership on matters of human rights, social justice, and environmental protection. I would expect every student to support these goals, but does the resolution actually accomplish its goals? It should be welcomed that the text states this policy shall not be interpreted as justification for racism or xenophobia of any kind, including but not limited to anti-Asian racism, xenophobia, or anti-Semitism. The question is now whether such a phrase is meant seriously or mere lip service. So let's review the document closely. We can start by talking about the Tlc Pipeline. The article the motion quotes stems from the National Observer dated March 2020. An article from the CBC on February 5th, 2021, they wrote, and I quote, "The industry puts food on the table," end quote. While the project has faced opposition from some Wet'suwet'en and hereditary chiefs, all 20 elected band councils along the coastal gas link routes support the pipeline and have signed benefit agreements with the company. Wet'suwet'en member and former elected band councillor Gary Naziel is one of the workers who has been kept on the project during the pandemic. He works for a pipeline contractor operating a grader and excavator to keep the winter roads open for pipe trucks. Nazil welcomes the jobs and benefits the pipeline has brought. He says local workers laid off during the construction slowdown have taken a big hit. The community will be benefiting from these pipelines, Nazil said. The industry puts food on the table and clothes on our back. So I want to ask a question at this point. Are you comfortable choosing sides between the hereditary leaders of the tribes and the tribal leaders? Because personally, I'm not. This is a discussion between two groups, and I'm not comfortable taking a side. I'm not willing to make that decision for them, not knowing the full picture. In the context of that was left out of the motion. Moving on to Lockheed Martin. The reasoning follows the principle that the abuse of a product creates a liability for the producer. Following that principle, one might also argue that Tesla is responsible for people dying in car accidents involving Tesla cars. Furthermore, the very nature of a democracy like Canada, for instance, is to be able to defend itself. Defending itself requires the existence of an army and of weapons. Therefore, the horrible tragedies in Yemen quoted in the text do not justify divestment from Lockheed Martin.
Councillor Gunderman.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Can I have an extension on Councillor Gunderman's time?
So moved.
Thank you very much. For how long?
Let's say 2 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wong. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, Councillor Gunderman, you may continue.
So there's a great difference between arms in private hands and arms in the hands of governments. The only matter discussed could be whether the export of arms to a regime like Saudi Arabia should be allowed. This is a matter of trade law and a matter of foreign policy, and by nature very complex. I see no reason to exclude Lockheed from an investment of McGill. If we want to talk about the example they're using in their reasoning, what happened in Yemen was a horrible tragedy, but Canada was also a part of the Saudi-led multinational coalition. And they appear to have been on the right side of that war. The coalition was trying to support the President Hadi, who was democratically elected following the Arab Spring. With the help of Iran, the Houthi fighters tried to keep in place the authoritarian President Saleh and not allow the election to go through. So now we want to punish a company who helped to try to get rid of an authoritarian president. I believe we should not side with an authoritarian regime. Again, no historic context is given in the motion, leaving an uninformed reader in the dark. A distinction needs to be made between the two cases above and two cases we're about to discuss. The arguments are TLC and Lockheed Martin are targeted because they're selling products causing direct harm. The next two cases are Remax and Oshkosh Corporation. The first one sells real estate and the second one vehicles, army and civilian vehicles. So to go to Oshkosh Corporation, they were named one of the world's most ethical companies for 6 consecutive years, and also named one of Fortune's magazine's world's most admired companies, one of America's most responsible companies by Newsweek, and is listed on the Dow Jones Sustainability World Index. So I really am wondering why we're calling for divestiture of this company if it's internationally recognized as ethical. So also, let's look at some footnotes. Footnote 25, visualizing Palestine. I don't know if that's the right footnote, but it shows death tolls on both sides while not disclosing how many armed Palestinian forces are among the dead. Furthermore, we do not know how many Jewish lives were saved by the force used. Do we want to be the judges in this complex conflict? Why don't we talk about 200 other armed conflicts in the world? Another footnote claimed that there was torture in Israel. Besides, the Israeli Supreme Court has declared torture unconstitutional in Israel. Another footnote speaks about apartheid in Israel. This is an abuse of a strong word. The case of South Africa cannot be made in Israel. It can well be discussed whether the Arab Israeli population enjoys 100% of the same living conditions as the Jewish population. But it is a fact that Arabs have become CEOs, Supreme Court judges, professors, national football team players, etc. Also, Israeli constitutional law knows the basic right of equality. Moving on to Remax. So Remax does business in 110 countries, including some dubious regimes such as Nicaragua, Venezuela, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. So why are we not talking about Remax in those countries? The Israeli-Arab conflict is one of the most complicated conflicts in the world. There's no doubt that Palestinians have suffered tremendously and have experienced injustices on many levels. At the same time, Israel has been under attack from Arab countries and terrorist groups throughout the entirety of its short history. As much as it is understandable that relatives and descendants of those who suffered in this conflict try to gain support.
I'm going to need an extension. Can I have an extension on Councillor Gunderman's time? Extend by 1 minute, okay?
I think maybe 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Can I have a second?
Thanks.
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Is there any opposition?
My bad.
Hearing none, Councillor Gunderman.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that you can definitely continue after this, Councillor Gunderman, but we also do have a long list of other people who would like to speak on debate, just for future.
This will be the last extension on Councillor Gunderman's time that I entertain. Thank you very much, UP University Affairs. Councillor Gunderman.
So why would the student body of McGill solve the Middle Eastern conflict? Why do we have to take that position? And who of us can claim with 100% certainty that they know what is going on? Also, most importantly, a lot of the footnotes come from electronic intifada. So electronic intifada, according to criteria of the definition of anti-Semitism of the European Center on Racism and Xenophobia, spreads anti-Semitism. They also support the BDS movement, which is, for instance, according to the German parliament, an anti-Semitic organization. So moving on to the last points, Puma.
Point of order. I believe he's using the wrong draft in this.
Yeah, I'm talking about the original one. But according to the speaker, no footnotes have been removed. So they should.
That's correct.
Speaker, if I could speak to that, I think, so actually, Councillor Gunderman, there were footnotes removed between the original motion as presented to steering committee and the one now. I think when the speaker is referring to no footnotes being removed, it is referring to the friendly amendments that were presented tonight.
Okay.
Yes. I'm going to note, yeah, Maya's correct. When steering committee reviewed the motion, I don't know how, Councillor Gunderman, I'm not sure which version you're referring to. When steering committee reviewed the motion once again, I believe the electronic intifada footnotes were removed.
Okay, I mean, okay, sure.
Okay, but continue, Councillor Gunderman.
Okay. Still reveals the intentions of the movers. Nevertheless, I 100% agree with the government of Canada that what is happening in China with the persecution of the Uyghurs fits the definition of genocide. I just wonder if this is the way to help moving forward, to divest in companies without really knowing the full picture. For example, footnote 29, Uyghurs for Sale claims Puma was involved in forced labor in China. Puma has stated explicitly that they do not have any involvement. So what is the quality of this resolution if only one side is heard? One of the great accomplishments of modern days is the right to be heard, and it is self-understood that McGill's principles include the commitment to this fundamental right. The world isn't black and white, there's nuance to it. In every conflict, no matter how seemingly clear, both sides need to be heard. After a little research, it becomes clear that this motion is based on misleading and biased sources without necessary consultation of a human rights lawyer, for example. You might agree or disagree with the contents of the motion. However, I do not see any other option than to encourage the authors of the petition to do more in-depth and accurate research on the matters at hand. As it stands, if the motion passes, think about how that reflects on us as a council. Think about how that reflects on you as individual councils, and think about how that reflects on us as a university. That we cannot take the time to properly evaluate the situations at hand, weigh both sides, and come to an informed conclusion after proper consultation. Since there's considerable support for this motion, and I ultimately represent the interests of my constituents, I would be more than willing to talk to the authors of this motion so we can revise it. Therefore, I urge everyone to oppose this motion as it was poorly researched, propagates fake news, and does not take into account any nuances, was done without consultation, and targets specific countries while ignoring the same practices in others. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we will move on to Noah Fisher.
I wanted to respond to some of the things being said and to some of the narrower focuses of individuals speaking against this motion. In particular, I wanted to address the fact that a lot of people have attempted to frame this motion as somehow being anti-Israel. When I look in particular, it asks to divest from the company Remax, which is, and only because of their involvement with the occupation. How divesting from a single corporation that is not based in Israel, involved with one part of the state and not the whole, is somehow against the entire state is unclear to me. As well as the fact, I also wanted to add that if the councillors believe that the motion involved is too narrow, and therefore targets certain groups too specifically, I believe the original motion as presented included all human rights issues. And if they want to expand it to that, I'm sure the movers would be very happy to hear that. However, if not, then it sounds to me like this is simply a way to avoid talking about why you don't want to pass this motion and why you want to support all of these acts of genocide and human rights violations. And lastly, I wanted to comment that I find I sympathize with concerns of Jewish students and their fears. As a Jewish student myself, I've experienced harassment since coming to McGill on multiple occasions around Montreal. However, I find it insulting to suggest that the main way to oppose this is to fight individuals who are simply trying to end an occupation. I can guarantee you that most of the instances of anti-Semitism, if not all of them that I've experienced, have not involved activists trying to end an occupation. And if people are seriously concerned about anti-Semitism on McGill campus, maybe they should actually focus on what is occurring on the ground and not simply use it as an excuse to attack these kinds of human rights efforts. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Noah Fisher. I'm just going to note, so as Noah mentioned, there was never, within the original motion, there was, the scope of the policy was to expand to all companies with human rights violations. I'm going to note, however, as chair of the steering committee, we did strike that out of order. We requested that it be removed, given that policies have to specifically be specific in scope, and issuing sort of a blank check allows for a lot of subjective interpretation, as well as it really doesn't, there's no clear threshold. Like, for example, the Divest motion that was moved last year, even though it didn't go in paragraph by paragraph with what this motion was doing, it was doing a list of all companies, for in this case, fossil fuels. We would accept that, but we would not be, steering committee will not entertain a motion just saying human rights, given that it's too subjective in scope and isn't as narrow as a good policy of the society should be. With that, we will move on to VP University Affairs.
Right, thank you. You'll have to be a bit patient. I've been thinking about what to say for a while. I do want to stress, and I think this has been said, that I think there were comments earlier about the disenfranchisement of students from SSMU as a political organization. And I want to say that of all of our political policies, of any position we have ever proposed to take, I, in my time as an executive and as a student, have never seen the level of student engagement and student interest in the passage of this policy, more so than any other political position we've ever endeavored to take. While I understand concerns over the disenfranchisement of students, I would say that this is an example of students being engaged, interested, and hopeful for participation in SSMU's governance. I mean, as the voting record of the consultative forum will show, this is a policy that is well supported by the membership. I would say that, as an executive and as councillors, I believe we've all received messages in support, or at least messages interested in the passage of this motion. So I'd say that as democratic representatives, our mandate is clear. This is a policy that is supported by the membership. This is a policy that would have passed, arguably, at the General Assembly, if not for the walkout. And I believe that it is our responsibility as councillors not to be swayed by what I see as misinformation, some creative reading of the policy, some allegations that are completely unfounded by the contents of the policy, which I'd like to note contains no reference to any individual nation, let alone even Israeli corporations. Even the Oshkosh and Remax are both American corporations. The majority of corporations here are American, complicit in human rights violations around the world, beyond just the West Bank. So I'd say that it's important that when making our decisions, we do so based on our reading of the policy and not based on allegations of content that is not there. Thank you.
University Affairs. Moving on, I will now recognize a member of the gallery, Gita Malawi.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to set something straight, because I feel like in many statements already made, BDS is always being misrepresented and weaponized as a tool to facilitate anti-Semitism. And I just wanted to make it clear that BDS is not a tool to facilitate anti-Semitism. It's it's a movement that has three distinct goals, which are never conveniently brought up, and those three goals are to end an occupation which is internationally recognized, to recognize rights of Palestinian citizens of Israel. And I would also like to bring up the point that a previous councillor brought up, I believe the business manager, I think, that Palestinian citizens of Israel have 100% the same rights as Israeli citizens. That is false, and I would encourage him to go check up on this fact. And number three, BDS advocates for the rights of Palestinian refugees to return to their home as stipulated by the UN resolution 194. So I would really appreciate it if BDS would stop being misrepresented. And I would also like to bring up the double standard that is being brought up about the fact that Israel is always being singled out and that it would cause anti-Semitism on campus. Why are we always getting this question again? Why aren't we getting a question about singling out China, for example, when it comes to the Uyghur clauses? Why is it always so focused on Israel? So yes, I'd just like to bring up the double standard, and thank you for letting me speak.
All right, thank you very much, Gita. With that, we will move on to Councillor Collins.
Hi. Wait, can you hear me? Okay, hi, sorry. Wait, you can hear me? My microphone's on. Okay, great, amazing. So I'd just like to make clear that as per a motion passed at AUS Council on Tuesday, I will be voting in favor of the motion because I have been bound to vote yes by Council. So I'm taking a yes stance towards this motion. So I'd just like to make that clear out of transparency. I have a couple things that I would like to address that arguments councillors have made so far. There are a couple of things. So first of all, it seems to be that there's a theme of councillors saying that we shouldn't make judgments on international conflicts in terms of what side to take. And I'd argue that this isn't really about us making a judgment. Like, we all had plenty of time to consult with our constituents and to do a lot of our own research. We're all taught how to do responsible, factual, empirical research here at McGill. So I think we're all capable of doing our due diligence and figuring out, what these conflicts actually look like. And I think that the argument being made by many councillors that these sources listed aren't good and that they're not proper and that there's not enough context provided by the movers of the motions is a very unfortunate distraction from discussing the quality of the policy at hand, which is really what we're here to talk about. And I'd kind of argue too that Councillor Gunderman, I do have a question about one of the sources that you discussed as well. You brought up that a couple corporations in the motion were well ranked in terms of ethical operations, but to reinforce your own point about context and about good sources, what are the measurements of that? Like, where does that ranking come from? Even then, throwing in examples like that and those kind of sound bites are making, I don't like where are the facts there. So I do think that, that discussion about judgments and that we can't make like a judgment on this motion, that's not really what we're here to do. We all have plenty of time to do research, and I really encourage everybody to do their due diligence with researching these sort of issues before coming to council. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Collins. We'll take one more intervention before we have finished our 15-minute and we enter into our mandatory 10-minute recess. And I will take another member of the gallery. So I will recognize Simone Babreau.
Hi, I have a few comments just in relation to some of the arguments that have been put forward. First of all, I just want to address the fact that there seems to be a dismissal of the discrimination that faces Palestinian students on McGill's campus. It's frustrating to hear time and time again that this issue is just being brought up because it's a hot topic or a controversy when there are students who are facing discrimination as a result of this conflict. Moreover, when an opinion is taken, it's usually in support of Jewish students claiming anti-Semitism, which is frustrating because it's, for lack of a better word, well, okay, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. It's contradictory to say that you want to support Jewish students and you claim that this is an anti-Semitic motion. Meanwhile, you're saying that we shouldn't be putting our attention or taking a stand on this issue. I really think that we should consider the lived experiences of many of the students that are in this council right now. I also would like to say that we have a choice in not taking a stand is kind of confusing as well, considering McGill is invested in these companies that are involved in human rights abuses. So not choosing to support divestment is taking a stand. As Paige mentioned, we have the ability to do research and speak with our students, as many of you have. So I don't see why that is an argument that makes sense. And that's all I really need to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Simone. With that, I will note that our 15-minute extension on debate has elapsed. Before entertaining potential future extensions, we're going to note that we're going to first enter into our mandatory 10-minute recess. So with that, we will enter into our 10-minute recess at 20:08, and we will resume Legislative Council at 20:18. the meeting back to order at 2019. With that, we're currently, debate has elapsed, so are there any motions currently wishing to be put forward on this at this time?
Oui, Madame la Présidente, je propose qu'on annote 5 minutes pour la période de débat.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor Smith. For everyone, extension on debate for 5 minutes. With that, can I have an extension?
Motion to amend it to 10 minutes.
Councillor Smith, would you be amenable?
Oui, je suis d'accord avec Senator Dariani.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. With that, for a 10-minute extension, is there any opposition? Hearing none, it has been granted. Senator Dariani, you may speak first.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to everyone who's come out here this evening. I think the motion at hand is great, and I would like to, first of all, and I do this always, to recognize the labor of the entire coalition in putting this and bringing this forward. I think it is key, and time has come for us to actually bring out the power of students in demanding the university to divest. And this is a strategy that has been long awaited and has taken lots of effort. So I think it's crucial that we acknowledge the efforts and the labor. I'd like to point out that a petition has been going around since last Tuesday after council, after the GA or consultative forum. And it has garnered 380 votes, signatures so far. And I'd also like to point out that 245 of these votes are from the Faculty of Arts, 21 are from the Faculty of Engineering. And I just would like to point out the amount of support for this motion. And more importantly, I think that this motion really does truly stand out as a signal to go against humanitarian abuses, including colonial land theft, environmental destruction, war crimes, crimes against humanities, and genocide, not just abroad, but also here in Canada and Turtle Island. And I think at the end of the day, as student representatives, it is important for us to acknowledge these lived experiences and the real trauma that continues to be upheld even at McGill should a policy like this not pass with support. So I'd like to reassure that Council today and my constituents that I will be voting in favor, and I urge other councillors to do so as well.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Dariani. We will next go to Dorothy, member of the gallery.
Hi, thank you, Madam Speaker. Hello, everyone. As someone who has observed this debate during the GA and also throughout this session, I think a common theme that I'm seeing from the opposition is that this is an anti-Semitic motion, and I think this achieves two things. The first thing is that it perpetrates the false belief that the existence of Palestinian human rights and the condemnation of the global military complex against Palestinians that is not only perpetrated by Israel, but also the UK, the US, and so on, and anything of that sort of condemnation is inherently anti-Semitic. I also think the second thing it achieves is that by singling out Palestinian-related clauses, I fear that we're being more than happy to chuck human rights for other people that are included in this motion, like the Wet'suwet and the Uyghurs, the Yemeni, and so on. And we're being all too happy to chuck all those in the trash and thus destroying international solidarity. I'd also like to address previous statements in support of the so-called ethical companies. And my question is, are we really going to trust a company when they say they're not complicit in genocide? I really think that's kind of questionable. And lastly, to those who might be thinking that this motion is too big or too broad or too hard of a motion to ever pass in the Senate or at the board or whatever, and feasibility questions like that, I think when students like us ought to really come together to try to move a mountain, the administration eventually moves a step. It happened in the 80s with apartheid It happened with the climate strike a couple of years ago, and we didn't get.
I'm gonna have to call your time as elapsed. Would you require an extension?
No, I'd just like to urge everyone to vote yes for this motion. That's good. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Dorothy. I'm just going to note for everyone who has their hands up, I'm prioritizing based on people who have not yet spoken. So if you haven't, if I haven't called on you, but you've spoken, it's not to say that you won't be recognized, but I'm just going in a specific order. With that, I'll now recognize Councillor Karasik.
All right, so I'm gonna make this quick. I also want to clarify that I also have been bound by AUS. So I will be voting in favor of this motion in favor. I did want to clarify one small thing, however. It was mentioned that there's an issue of double standards. I did want to clarify that SMU has in fact had complaints about previous things from the Chinese community, in particular their statement for 412 Hong Kong youths. I want to be clear, I'm in favor of that statement and I support them in doing that. But I do want to make it clear there has in fact been a history of other communities being annoyed at events as well.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Karasik. Zahur, sorry, my apologies if I mispronounced your name, but you may now speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I wanted to address something that was brought up a while ago. Also about kind of taking sides, especially with regard to the Wet'suwet'en conflict. I just wanted to note that in this case, since it is a matter of human rights, I just want to reiterate that yes, we are in a sense taking a side, but that side is of course given by precedent in this course from the Supreme Court of Canada. So in 1997, in the Delgamuukw decision, the Supreme Court of Canada designated the hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en Nation as having jurisdiction over their traditional territories, and those chiefs have clearly voiced their opposition to the pipeline and have noted that the forcible removal by the RCMP, given the authorization from TC Energy, forcible removal of Indigenous peoples and their allies is against Article 10 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which says in part that Indigenous people shall not be forcibly removed from their lands or territories. No relocation shall take place without the free, prior, and informed consent. Moreover, on the question of TC Energy providing jobs to Indigenous people, simply providing jobs does not preclude a company from performing human rights abuses, as we've documented that they have. Moreover, the vast majority of the jobs that pipelines like CGL would provide are temporary. The construction of the pipeline would provide very few sustainable permanent jobs in general, and even fewer to Indigenous people, as can be seen by the demographic of the TC Energy Corporation. Of course, with TC Energy, we aren't opposed solely to the violence that they perpetrated on Turtle Island, as well in Mexico, as well as in the United States. The Rosebud Sioux and Fort Belknap Indians are fighting TC Energy's Keystone XL pipeline proposal in Mexico, the Nahua, Totonaca, Utomi, and Tepe.
Thank you very much. Do you require an extension?
A motion to extend the time by 3 minutes.
Can I have a shorter extension, Senator Dorianani?
1.5 minutes.
That would be great. Councillor Karasik, will you still second?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. As I was saying, in Mexico, the Nahua, Totonaca, Utomi, and Tepehuua have all spoken against TC Energy's construction of pipeline on their land, some of these which would run within 200 meters of people's homes. And finally, during this pandemic, TC Energy has shown disregard for Indigenous health during COVID-19 by sending workers for the pipeline during the pandemic, several of whom have been shown without masks and have been found to be COVID-19 positive. With that, I will yield the rest of my time.
All right, thank you very much. I'll next go to Abir.
So I just wanted to quickly just say, in my role as like an equity commissioner for SMU, I was consulted on this policy, and me and my colleague found it in line with McGill's commitment or SMU's commitment to equity and the equity policy. So I do want to point that out, that I am very in awe of the consultation process, and it's very unique and I've never seen in my experience at McGill. and also like the commitment to representing students. Like I'm also in awe of like the intense student support across faculties, across disciplines. So I urge you all to vote yes because of this like intense consultative process and because of like the immense student support.
All right, thank you very much. With about 3 minutes remaining, I'll take 3 more individuals. I will go next to Maya. Maya?
Yep, sorry about that. I was just struggling a bit. I just wanted to add a couple things on points that were being brought before. I wanted to emphasize what Noah mentioned earlier about the fact that as a Jewish student, the anti-Semitism that I am concerned about is not coming from movements like this. I really wanted to emphasize that because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that. Further, I wanted to emphasize that criticizing the occupation is not criticizing Israel's right to exist, as was mentioned. Actually, I think that a lot of the folks that have spoken so far have been phrasing the policies that we're trying to promote here as something that's crazy, something that's unachievable, something that's unprecedented. And I just wanted to emphasize that this is actually something that has been around for decades within the Jewish community as well. Speaking as an Israeli, as a Jewish student, I know that folks that I know in Israel have for years now been on a personal level divesting personally from products made from the occupied territories. So this is not a new thing. This is something that within the Jewish community is very prevalent. And to say that all Jews feel a certain way or that this is a mainstream Jewish opinion feels insulting to me, as Noah mentioned before. I also just wanted to say that there has been claims here that this is unfair, that it misrepresents what's going on in Israel and Palestine right now. And I just wanted to ask, what claim for Palestinian human rights would this legislative council not take issue with? I'm sorry if this is a little bit too frank, but I just wanted to say that I think anything that would come up regarding Palestinian human rights would be contentious. And the reasons that we're bringing this up because McGill students are concerned with these issues. These are from corporations that McGill students were already working on researching. That is why we get specific. And even though we may not have talked with a gazillion human rights lawyers, we are the experts at McGill, within McGill's student body on these issues. And for that reason, I urge everyone here to vote yes, to listen to your constituents, because that's what you're voted here to do. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Maya. Seeing, I believe VP External hasn't yet spoken in debate, so VP External.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So, yes, I'll just say a couple of things regarding the significance of this motion. So, it's important to remember that this motion was approved overwhelmingly at the consultative forum last week. 90% of all students voted in favor of this motion. This motion and the policy have seen an extraordinary engagement of the student body at within SMU, the kind of thing that is once once in your undergraduate career that you'll see if you're lucky. And I mean, we've seen it we've seen it a couple of times. But I want to just kind of emphasize that not only do we have a responsibility to our students, our students who have come to make their will known at consultative forum and really at General Assembly last week, we also have a responsibility that extends beyond our student body to marginalized communities across the world. Marginalized communities across the world who also exist within our constituency, or rather within our student body. And I think that considering the impact of adopting a motion like this on the signal that it would show to other student associations, other organizations, political organizations, that SMU is willing to take a stand in solidarity with Palestinian human rights and is willing to recognize that despite what people might find controversial or contentious, SMU can take very seriously and understand very clearly that this is a matter of human rights, and that...
Thank you very much, VP External.
All right.
VP External, would you need an extension?
I would love one, thank you.
Perhaps.
Like 1 minute is fine.
Okay. And
So moved.
And thank you very much. Can I have a second? All right.
I'll second it.
And thank you very much, VP University Affairs. Is there any opposition? Hearing none. VP External for a 1 minute extension.
Thank you. Just to emphasize how significant it would be for SMU to adopt not only a position that stands in solidarity with a number of different marginalized communities across the world, but specifically with Palestinian communities, I think is something that we all as a council ought to be proud of, to have the opportunity to vote in favor of. So recognizing that this motion has come to us from a consultative forum of a highly engaged student body, recognizing that we have a responsibility to demonstrate leadership on matters of human rights, social justice, and environmental protection. I strongly encourage everyone here to not only to vote in favor of this, but to remember this day, because it's a very important and consequential day that we should all be proud of for passing this motion.
Great, thank you very much, VP External. For last intervention, Councillor Alwan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd also like to speak strongly in favor of this motion, and I want to highlight all the points raised so far by the members of Gallery and the councillors that have spoken in favor of the motion. I think their points are much more representative of what I believe the student body voiced and voted upon at the General Assembly. Like, we have to remember, this was a 90% in favor vote. Like, we've been given like an incredible democratic mandate in regards to this particular policy. And it's also much more representative of what I've heard from my constituents as well. And to be like very frank, I've been like dumbfounded by some of the points made by councillors in their prepared speeches so far. Like, some of them were based on out-of-date copies of the motion, riddled with like what's been repeatedly pointed out by members of the gallery as factually, like frankly speaking, factually incorrect information, and with rhetoric entertaining what like in any other context would be rightfully called out as wild speculation regarding the motives of the people bringing forward the motion, like painting them as, you know, closeted BDS activists or whatever. Like, these are, as has been mentioned, these are the foremost activist groups on our campus. These are our own constituents and McGill students speaking. Like, it isn't Electronic Intifada that's bringing up this motion. It's McGill students. And like, I particularly detest the assertion that most McGill students like don't care about human rights, or that this is like some sort of global issue that isn't relevant to us. This is often made, this assertion in this debate, and I've like never really seen it substantiated. Like, quite to the contrary, I think like given like all the interest like VP External just highlighted, I think we can safely say that there is quite a bit of support and interest in regarding like defending human rights, and like I would hope so on the part of McGill students. And this kind of rhetoric particularly alienates like marginalized groups on campus as well. Like, it basically erases the voices of like the Uyghur Muslim students on campus, the Palestinians, who, you know, like obviously very much care about these issues and are materially impacted.
If you're wishing to.
Could I just get an extension for like a minute?
So moved.
Thank you very much, Senator Dorianani. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you very much, VP University Affairs. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the 1 minute extension has been granted.
Yeah, and so like this is what I want to highlight in particular. Like, we've been given an incredible mandate by the student body Like procedurally speaking, democratically speaking, I think it would just be incredible for council to overturn a 90% in favor vote, as well as like the hundreds of additional signatures that have been received on the petition. And like at this point, it just seems like a considerable chunk of the McGill student population supports this. And I just don't think we've seen like a proportionate like opposition to it. Like we're fond of saying that Ledge Council is the most democratic body in SMU governance, but like guess what? Like students are what we answer to, and students are like the opinion of voiced by what was basically a quorum of students at General Assembly is definitely more democratic than like whatever like 20 elected representatives can provide. And also like as a final point, I just want to quickly say that like I think we need to reframe this discussion. Like this isn't about McGill or about SMU like taking an international stance. It's about like inherently McGill disentangling itself from international conflicts, from divesting in like one-sided oppression. So yeah, I just think it's absurd to like assert that this is like SMU taking a side, whereas very much SMU advocating the opposite.
All right, thank you very much. With that, I will note that our 15-minute extension on debate has been elapsed, and so with that, I will move on to all other motions. I will begin with
motion to call the question.
All right, we have a motion to call the question. Thank you very much.
Could I move to call by roll call?
To call the question or for voting?
Vote by roll call. Or actually, do we need to vote on calling the question first?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries. We'll move back to that. VP University Affairs. Can I have a second on vote to call the question? Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Is there any opposition? All right, hearing none, the question has been called. With that, we will enter into voting. We do have an individual VP University Affairs moving to vote by roll call. This requires a simple majority. So can I have a second to this capacity?
Seconded.
Thank you very much, Senator Daryanani. VP University Affairs, would you care to provide motivation?
Yeah, as Councillor Wan so eloquently stated, this is a tremendously important vote, both for us as councillors and executives, and for SMU in its history of political advocacy. And I believe that, particularly because this is coming to us from a consultative forum, it's more important now for this particular vote, perhaps more important than any past vote, for us to be truly transparent to our constituents. And for that reason, I believe that we should all stand our ground proudly and vote in a way that our constituents can see.
All right, thank you very much, VP University Affairs. With that, I'll first ask, is there any opposition?
Yep, I oppose.
All right, hearing that, we're going to launch into a simple placard vote. So with this, we're just going to do raise of hands. So I'll ask currently all individuals with their hands raised to please lower them. All right. I note that this is procedural, so only approve or oppose votes will be entertained. There's no abstentions within the motion of voting. So with that, all individuals, voting members, I will count to make sure, but all voting members in favor of the vote to call by roll call can raise their hand at this time. All right, thank you very much. You may lower them. And all individuals opposed. With 23 in favor and 2 opposed, the motion to approve by roll call has been approved. With that, we will move into a roll call based vote. So parliamentarian, if you could just make, excellent, thank you very much. We're just going to, for purpose of the minutes for clarification, we're just going to go how it appears. I know that there are some individuals out of order. That's fine. We're just able to be, it's easier to go in the order that they actually appear on the row, and we'll fix it afterwards. So with that, we'll begin with, also, I will note, as usual, you have the motion to approve, the motion to oppose, or the motion to abstain. If anyone has questions on what we're approving, let me know. But with that, I will begin with Councillor Collins.
Yes, in favor.
Councillor Crossick.
En faveur.
Councillor Smith.
Madame la Présidente, je vote pour la motion.
Councillor Williamson.
Je suis contre.
Councillor Litvina.
Yes, I vote for the motion.
Councillor Mulvaney.
I'd like to abstain.
Councillor Awan.
In favor.
Councillor Lee. Councillor Lee.
Oh, sorry about that. Opposed.
All right, thank you very much. Proxy for Councillor Bullhose.
In favor.
Councillor Kirksue. Councillor Kirksue. Councillor Reed.
In favor.
Councillor Page.
In favor.
Councillor Bonin is absent. Councillor Gunderman.
Opposed.
Councillor Kunzen.
Opposed.
Councillor Wan.
Je suis contre.
Councillor Kodadati.
In favor.
Councillor G.
Favor, in favor.
Councillor Morgan, I believe, is absent. Councillor Fernandez.
In favor.
Councillor Sood.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Zhang.
In favor.
Senator Jarianani.
Strongly in favor.
Councillor Morali.
In favor.
Councillor Drew.
Favor.
SMU President.
Abstain.
VP University Affairs.
Never more proudly in favor, Madam Speaker.
VP Student Life.
In favor.
VP External.
I'm very in favor. Thank you for asking.
VP Finance.
In favor.
Senator Parsons.
Abstain.
Councillor Ramey.
Abstain.
And Councillor Nelson.
Je suis très en faveur.
I will just want to ask more. Councillor Kirksue. Okay. With that, I will formally announce the closure of voting, and we will just wait momentarily for the tabulation. All right, thank you very much, parliamentarian. So with that, with 21 in favor, 5 opposed, and 4 abstentions, the motion has been approved. With that, we will move on to the next item of the agenda. Item 11, reports by committees. We will begin by item 11A, report from the Executive Committee.
Oh, sorry. I was waiting to be called on, but I can speak. So yeah, this is the report of the Executive Committee for the last 2 weeks. There was the hiring of an External Affairs Coordinator, Community Affairs Commissioner. We signed on to a coalition for the Tlc Pipeline on behalf of SMU, and we also sent a letter to Madame Jennifer Macaron to request a meeting. She had responded back to set the meeting, which is good news. I'm not sure where we stand on that, though. I don't know if the actual meeting date has been set down. but we also approved the job description for the 2 campus crops positions, and I think that's the end of the report, so I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you very much, SMU President. Are there any questions on the report of the Executive Committee? Seeing none, we will move on to now item 11B, report from the Services Committee. I don't believe we have a report, so VP Student Life, would you like to move one from the floor?
We don't have a report for the Services Committee. Are we able to postpone to the next Ledge Council meeting?
Yep. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you very much, Senator Darianani. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, it will stand postponed. Moving on to item 11C, report from the Affordable Student Housing Committee. VP External.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So this is the report of the Affordable Student Housing Committee for the period November 19th to last Sunday. So yeah, just kind of, well, you can see all of the committee members there. It's a really great committee, actually. I'm very happy with everything that goes on there. It's, yeah, nice place to be. So I'll just note that Community Affairs Commissioner Nathan McDonald was the chair. I'm the interim chair for the time being. Sierra Francal Pereira is the new Community Affairs Commissioner, and she'll be the incoming chair in the near future. So we've met on all of those occasions, once over the winter break, and once on January 11th to plan the tenants' rights event. And then the others are just regular meetings of the committee. So going on to activities, since the last committee report to council, the former Community Affairs Commissioner took a few directives to visit the Concordia Student Union's Woodnote project. So this is their affordable student housing development of, I think, 144 units just on the north end of the Parc La Fontaine. So that happened in November. This semester we have had some good lively activity. The first was a tenants' rights event on January 12th, which was very, very well attended. We're consulted on some motions regarding the unhoused populations and public safety, which both passed, which were very nice, and some engagement with the Royal Victoria for the public coalition. Upcoming activities, it says the Public Assembly on Student Housing. So this has already happened by now. It was fairly well attended, and there was some really good engagement and ideas developed. So those will be brought back to the committee for the next few meetings to kind of help frame the committee's ongoing future activities. And in the same vein, we will be reviewing the committee terms of reference, the Affordable Student Housing Plan, and the Affordable Student Housing Position in our upcoming meetings. So that's all. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions on the report of the Affordable Student Housing Committee? Seeing none, we will move on to item 10C, sorry, my apologies, 11D, Mental Health Committee. I believe VP Student Life to present.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So for the Mental Health Committee, I'll go point by point on this one. To start with the Outreach Committee, our Mental Health Action Week was planned by the Outreach Committee, and that happened in the last week of January. It went quite well. We did a series of daily educational posts and also did a takeover of the McGill Instagram account. And also, Outreach Committee would like you to follow SMU Mental Health on Facebook and on Instagram, so the links are provided in the report. For Advocacy Committee, we are still collecting feedback for 2 surveys, one on remote learning and mental health, and the other on wellness hub satisfaction. So there's also a preliminary report that you can consult that is provided here. That includes the fall 2020 findings for our survey on remote learning and mental health. There's also another survey to complete. It's learning from fall 2020, and that's been launched to understand how remote learning should be transferred to future years. So moving on to the mental health roundtable. Our mental health roundtable meets every 3 weeks on Thursday evenings. And so these are led by the MH Commissioner, and it brings together various stakeholders on campus to talk about mental health initiatives happening. And so the MH Roundtable has been reviewing the academic wellness proposal, which was recently passed by the Legislative Council as part of an addendum to the MH mental health, the MH policy and plan. And also they have discussed Mental Health Action Week 2. To move on to Wellness World, so our Mental Health Commissioner, Julia, is working with Student Services to implement Wellness World, which is an online digital wellness solution that bridges academic and wellness dimensions of student life and also helps students find resources on and off campus to mental health resources, basically. And it is going to be launched, or the expected launch date is for late March or early April this year, 2021, and the pilot year is going to be funded by Student Services. To move on to the academic wellness proposal. So this proposal was approved by the Legislative Council in January, and so that is a proposal that advises on campus mental health and how to bridge essentially like academic life and mental health. And so currently efforts are focused on implementing efforts are focused on garnering support from McGill staff and administration to move this as a plan to be approved by the Senate. Moving on to Keep Me Safe. So Keep Me Safe is our 24/7 counseling resource that we provide to all students free of charge. And so in the fall, SSMU students had used the service 705 times, and 352 people uniquely used the Keep Me Safe service. A little bit more about Keep Me Safe. They've also recently launched the Campus Ambassador Program. So 3 undergrad and 3 grad students will be promoting the service through social media and having events and initiatives to help students learn about Keep Me Safe, and that it's a resource available. And recently also, staffing has increased for Keep Me Safe, and so wait times are also going to significantly reduce as a result. Various other things, student insurance. So our mental health commissioner is investigating student care and Blue Cross insurance plans to resolve any gaps. And the SSMU mental health webpage is also being updated. Lastly, for the Student Wellness Hub, there are some highlights from the Student Wellness Advisory Board, and that includes usage data has been shared at those meetings, as well as like improved feedback pathways. Moving forward, Julie, who's our mental health commissioner, wants to create a webpage to communicate to students what's been done based on the feedback that the Wellness Hub has been receiving. So for instance, getting extensive training regarding how to best serve students from marginalized communities, like non-binary and trans students. And yeah, that's pretty much it essentially for a mental health report. And if folks have any questions, they can reach out to the mental health commissioner at mentalhealth@smu.ca. Yeah, thanks very much. I'll stand for any questions if folks have them.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions on the report of the Mental Health Committee? Seeing none, we will move on. We'll move on to item 11E, report from the Funding Committee, VP Finance.
Yep, thank you. All right, cool. Hey, everyone. So this report, I'm just going to go over the exhaustive list of funding applications that we've approved thus far. Also, special shout out to the individuals here who are on funding committee, Councillor G, Gunderman, Lee, and then the VP Student Life. Y'all are amazing. So I'll start with the club fund. That's the list. If you go to the next slide, it's like a 2-slide list. Yep. So we've given out a total of $10,715.61 for the club fund. For the Campus Life Fund, we've given out a total of $11,852.67. Ambassador Fund, $11,347.78. Community Engagement Fund, $4,795.04. Equity Fund, $3,223.89. Mental Health Fund, $3,528. And finally, First Year Fund, 100 big ones. So there are two funds that haven't been used by the funding committee so far, the Environment Fund and the Space Fund. With that being said, both of those funds are also accessed through separate committees. So that's just to say that they haven't been unused, but they haven't been distributed by the funding committee. So there's a list of all the balances for the funds thus far, as provided by the wonderful accounting team. Thank you to them. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions on the report of the funding committee? Seeing none, I will move on to item 12, reports by councillors, and we'll begin with item 12A, report from Councillor Page. Councillor Page, I believe we did not have a report submitted. Would you like to read one from the floor?
I was not aware of this report. Apologies.
We have a motion to postpone.
Oui, je propose.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you very much, VP Finance. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, it has been postponed to the next Legislative Council. Just a reminder, everyone, to check the email that I send out. I believe it's usually on the Monday or Tuesday, the week following council, that reminds everyone of whose reports are due. With that, we will move on to item 12B, report from Councillor Zhang, Science.
Hello, this is a pretty short report from me. So, as of the last report from Shivali, we've had two motions that have been approved, and they have the motion to bring to referendum the renewal of the McGill Science 21st Century Computer Fund, which has just been existent before. It's just a renewal. Same thing for the second motion, the renewal of the Science Student Space Improvement Fund. These are all under the BV Finance. So, in terms of the president, the Governance Review Committee meetings are in full swing, and so any constitutional amendments that have been decided from that committee will be brought up to referendum in the next school year, so not in this term. Elections are coming up in March, so I've just outlined the election calendar here below. I don't have to read all of that. And in terms of the VP Academia Week happened a couple weeks ago. There were 12 different events spread out over 5 days, and the attendance at each event was pretty good. So it was around 10 to 15 individuals, depending on the event. The most successful one was the Science Educator Talk, the intersection of neuroscience and philosophy, and a workshop on how to apply to undergraduate research awards, and also a workshop to Introduction to Python. In terms of academic events, they had a research panel event, and it was pretty good turnout. I put this document, I thought it'd be pretty useful if anyone was taking any science classes. There's like guidelines in terms of how the exam should be running, and there's like rules that pertain to the exam. So that'd be pretty useful if you are taking a science course. In terms of the VP internal, the Science Internal Committee had and / are having 4 events as of the semester so far. And so I've laid them out there. The Grad Ball Committee decisions are finalized. The Science Games Committee are finalized, and both of them are currently planning the events. In terms of VP Finance, we're moving away from checks and doing direct deposits as a means of paying our executives. And that was successfully implemented a couple weeks ago. And the last one is our VP Sustainability. She's a lot of committees. So for mental health, they've had a baking and a virtual pet therapy events that went pretty well. They're sending out last year's mental health video where they interviewed a couple of science professors to talk about mental health. And they're working on a potential alumni speaker series. In terms of SASEC, Green Week happened, I believe, last week. And so that included baking, virtual art case competitions, and a week-long scavenger hunt. For Charity Week, they've officially donated $500 to Old Brewery Mission, which was their organization of choice for this year. And Charity Week will be happening in the middle of March. They're working alongside the Mental Health and the Social Sustainability Committee for their events, and we'll be selling merch. They're bucket hats and they're pretty cool. And lastly, for social sustainability, they're planning a social media campaign where people can send their own experiences about overcoming inequalities and just overall expanding their social media presence. That's it for me.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions on the report of Councillor Zhang? Seeing none, we will move on to item 12C, report from Councillor Williamson.
Hey y'all, so this is a little not out of date, but out of date because AUS technically met on Tuesday, but our February 9th meeting, the speaker began with an updated Robert's Rules of Orders as they met with a parliamentarian from the US. We had two motions brought to council, both of which passed. The first was to ratify FMC decisions, and the second was to ratify the AUS 2021 winter referendum, which will be taking place from the 16th to the April 2nd, with all of the included events. And our next Ledge Council was February 23rd. Personally, Mental Health Accountability is meeting on March 1st. SSPN is planning a very cool escape room, so everyone be excited for that. Work Your BA has finished and went very well. The Arts Community Engagement is working on some events for Embrace Week, which will be occurring over the end of March break, and I highly encourage everyone to get involved. And finally, Mental Health at AUS is working on a mental health scavenger hunt, so look out for that. My contact info and office hours are below, and I stand for questions.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Williamson. Are there any questions on the report? Seeing none, we will move on to item 12D, report from Councillor Morale, Services.
Hi, everyone. So my report's pretty basic. Again, I'm the services rep. I've organized it by committee. We saw the Affordable Student Housing Committee report earlier. We just had our housing assembly on Tuesday. It was great. For the services committee, we'll get the report next council. And we've just been discussing shared experiences that the services have, and it's really good to be able to communicate with each other. The services review committee, almost done our review process. So, we'll come up with a report and present it before council. And we've just shifted the way we review committees based on how the pandemic has affected everything. Yeah, that's it. I stand for questions.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions on the report of Councillor Morale? Seeing none, we will move on. Moving on to item 13, executive reports. We will begin with the report from the president. SSMU President, you may present.
Hey everyone, also hopping on the train of short and sweet reports because it was a very meeting late last 2 weeks. So the Senate met yesterday, or I think it was yesterday. Sorry, the days are blending together. But the Senate met and we had a nice open discussion on sorry. So we had a nice open discussion on a few different things that I think the VP University Affairs will report on a bit more. But the Board of Governors also had their, annual retreat this morning, which we talked about, moving towards or testing different departments to move towards a hybrid model in terms of either work from home or whatever the new normal is going to look like in the future. It was a very useful conversation, and I'm sure they're going to communicate their, findings. It's not necessarily a decision soon. Catalyst Awards Steering Committee met under sustainability. So that's the Catalyst Awards are different sort of sustainable or environment-related awards that go out to either groups or students or staff working on different projects. So we finalized the candidates or groups or projects that would be winning this year. BombCom also met during this time, where we started discussing, I guess, what's going to go into 351 Peel, as well as stuff in the university center, such as like more student-run operations when it eventually reopens. So we're continuing that conversation at tomorrow's meetings. We'll have more to report in 2 weeks' time. I also had a meeting with some representatives from the Faculty of Music about the equity committee that was recently formed there. So that was a very useful conversation. I also met with the new Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Officer that Miguel recently hired pursuant to their his plan to address anti-Black racism. He's a wonderful person who took the role, so I'm very excited to see them grow in that position. And then lastly, I think myself and the VP University Affairs, we were guest judges for a 3-minute thesis competition for postgraduate students. And that was a really fun opportunity and really engaging to see and hear about many things that I did not know about coming from 2 very small faculties. So that's the end of my report, and I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions on the report of the president? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 13B, report from the VP University Affairs. VP University Affairs.
Hello, everyone. Okay, let's get into it. Senate and committee activities. So USAP still meeting. We have discussed like must-pass assessments and exam accommodations. So must-pass assessments are like, if you fail the assessment, you fail the class. We discussed if we wanted to continue allowing that as like an assessment caveat. We also discussed accommodations, and we're meeting again on the 8th. CSS mandate revision working group. So we finally have the first draft of the revised committee terms of reference. Right now, we're entering consultations with the DIPSL, the Director of Student Services, and the CSS faculty co-chair. So Senate met yesterday. There were reports from the ombudsperson and from the Office of Student Life and Learning. There's also the open discussion on student experience with remote learning, which was actually presented by the CSS, including a report, presentation that I wrote. That was interesting. I think it was an informative discussion and an opportunity for a lot of senators to present student concerns. Senate caucus, last time we met was on the 23rd. We reviewed Senate agendas and prepared for the open discussion. The mental health team also presented their academic wellness proposal that the VP Student Life mentioned. And the caucus advisory board is still in the process of revising the IRs of representation and advocacy. Right now, we're on IR2, undergraduate university representation. We're hoping to move into committee representatives and external advocacy in the next 2 meetings. In research, the Indigenous Equity Researcher hiring is ongoing. I'm assisting the commissioner with that. And the Student Rights Researcher and Advocacy Commissioner has completed an executive summary of the results of their report on COVID-19 student experience. So that full report should be coming sometime in the coming weeks. For equity and advocacy, Bacon met on 19th to discuss the consultations that I had with the DIPSL and Vice Principal University Advancement. A lot of it is still in the process of, okay, so the results of those consultations are still being discussed. All I can say is that there are a lot of new unexpected opportunities and some associated setbacks that we're currently in the process of deliberating. But there is still movement on that front. For equity infrastructure, I've started onboarding the GSC. I also met with the Student Services EDI advisor, and as before, the equity policy revisions are still ongoing, except now the Black Affairs Commissioner and Gender and Sexuality Commissioner were added to the revision working group. Right now, the last time we met, we revised definitions, the Equity Complaints Committee, accountability and reporting, and we're starting now on the complaints procedures. I also attended a J-Board hearing on the reference that was submitted in 2018 regarding the applicability of the 2016 BBS reference on services, and I'm working with the IC to expand and restructure their portfolio. Then in terms of academic resources, I had another bi-weekly meeting with the library admin, comes every 2 weeks. We reviewed more LIF applications and consulted on plans for library communications and promotions. They're planning on starting an Instagram page for basically dedicated to library architecture. So if anyone is into like social architecture content or historical architecture content, keep a lookout for that. That is it for my report. I will stand for questions, and if there are none, thank you all for listening.
All right, thank you very much, VP University Affairs. Are there any questions on the report? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is item 13. Item 13, my apologies, this is incorrect. Item 13C, which is the report from the VP Finance.
Yep, thank you. So I'll start with general finances and accounting, beginning with the budget revisions part 2 for this year. So like I've mentioned in previous reports, it's going to be based on forecasts for the rest of the year. We still have a few forecasts that we have to finalize just to ensure that everything is as accurate as possible, just to ensure that everything runs smoothly until the end of the fiscal year. In terms of next year's budget, so the 2022 budget, everything is pretty much finalized. We're just waiting on a pay equity report from Celertia, which happens every 5 years. It just happened to land on this year, so we're waiting for that report to ensure that all of our salaries and wages are equitable and in line with, I guess, common salaries in Quebec. I'm also currently starting work on amendments to the Areas of Finance. So the initial work and consultations have begun, but that's very much in the preliminary stages. And the finance website is still under construction. For funding, so the funding committee continues to meet, and as always, funding applications can be found at the bottom of this report for all that are curious. It was also included, I think, on the funding report presented earlier. And then for the SSMU Awards of Distinction, I mentioned it earlier, but it's a $2,000 award designed to recognize students who've demonstrated excellence at McGill University. So if you know anyone who you think has demonstrated excellence at McGill, please tell them to apply. This is a great opportunity, and $2,000 is quite a bit. Applications are due April 1st. Thank you. For clubs, so we've received another round of club banking resources, which will be used as an opportunity to test the updated distribution system, as mentioned last council in my report. For services, so for credit cards, credit card reconciliation is ongoing. We've kind of picked up the pace on that just to ensure that it all happens each month. And I also mentioned that it's a slightly new system, which I think has made it easier on services, hopefully, so that is nice. And also I'll mention to council, but cards will be disabled on May 1st, just to accommodate a transition in signing officers between this fiscal year and next fiscal year. For service budgets, so I've collected all the updated service budgets for the winter semester. Things are looking about as expected. I'll have to give them a more in-depth review, which I'll bring for analysis to next council, but yeah, for the most part, pretty much as expected. And then I've also provided services with service finance feedback form. So if they have any financial related feedback or things that they'd like to see process-wise, they can submit it using that form, which I've sent out to all of them. Just because so much has changed this year in terms of finances, and service feedback is always crucial. For other things that are happening, as mentioned by Councillor Williamson, SPIN is planning its 3rd event, which will be an escape room type event, which I'm super pumped about. So you should all keep a lookout for that because it's going to be a lot of fun. That is the end of my report. I will stand for questions.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions on the report from the VP Finance? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 13D, report from the VP Student Life. The VP Student Life has 2 reports to present, one from the 2021-02-11 and one for today's council session.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, I've combined them both into one, actually. So I combined them both in the 0225 report. Thank you. So for the period of January, the end of January, essentially, to now, so for the past month, clubs, in terms of clubs, the Clubs Portal Committee has been having frequent meetings. We are currently waiting for more information from Aventis, and we'll compare our 2 platforms currently, which are Aventis and Campus Labs, for this Clubs Portal. In terms of progress, it is going quite smoothly, and we do expect that we'll be able to have something in place in time for fall of next semester. Our club committee meetings are also happening weekly. At those meetings, we of course approve interim and full status clubs as well as club constitutions. And so we've been seeing almost a slowdown of new clubs in this semester as compared to last semester, but that is of course quite understandable given the COVID context and also just given that it is winter semester. After that, we had our club workshops take place on the weekend of February 6th and 7th. And so we had our club audit, finance, GSVP, equity, and sustainability workshops happen. Thanks to all the presenters and thanks to the folks who were able to show up. Our attendance was moderate, but it was pretty much the numbers that we expected. And so folks attended the workshops if they weren't able to attend in the fall. And then lastly, I had a meeting I've been having meetings with various clubs during my office hours, but one particularly, I met with iGEM to discuss whether they want to become an ISG or a club. So for services, I'm currently in meetings with all services to present their space agreements to them, which are formalized agreements between services and the SSMU, non-binding, non-legal, but they are intended to formalize space allocations that are given to services. And so in addition to presenting those agreements, I'm also doing mid-semester check-ins with all these services. And so far I've met with BSN, PSC, MCERT, and Play Club, and I'll continue to meet with the rest of our 16 services over this week and the next week. Services Review Committee has been meeting as well. We are continuing to do our direct audits. And so the internal and external audit process is done or close to done. And so the report will be presented to one legislative council meeting soon, as Noah had mentioned in their report. And we also approved the MSA, or the Muslim Students Association, as a service. And as folks know, the fee levy for that service was approved at the last Leg Council meeting as well. For Services Committee, we had a meeting on February 24th where all the services came and provided their feedback and talked about what's going on, any events that they're doing, any programming. And we also talked about updates and a little bit about the Finance Commissioner's report that was brought to Council a few meetings ago, and our thoughts on it. And then lastly, we had meetings with Midnight Kitchen, myself, the building director, and the general manager to discuss building use and Midnight Kitchen's programming. Mental health wise, I covered a lot of this in the mental health report, so I won't go over too much of it. I'll just say the MHV renewal was up for is going to be up for renewal at the winter referendum, along with a question about it becoming non-opt-outable. And then Wellness World is being brought to McGill students quite soon, ideally in March or April 2021. And Keep Me Safe meetings are ongoing with Steve Cameron, who's the head of that program. For family care, the SSMU daycare board of directors meetings are going quite well. We are approving the budget for the daycare in the coming weeks, and we've also talked a little bit about programming and making updates to our programming as we are looking to have our programming align more with our budget and our financial constraints. And so some things are shifting there, but things are going quite well on that front. Today there was a joint board and Senate Committee on Equity Family Care Subcommittee meeting. And so we talked a little bit about the events that took place over Family Day that the JBSCE Family Care Subcommittee had planned. And we also talked about how to better provide support to student caregivers. And then lastly, some miscellaneous things that happened. I'm interviewing for the Accessibility Commissioner position next week, actually. Also, the Committee on Student Services convened on February 1st. And then I had various meetings, one with sponsorships, one with comms team about website updates. There was an anti-racism training with the rest of the student exec that we all did on February 5th. And then I've just been also meeting with folks who are interested in running for this role next year. If anyone is interested, now it's too late, but yeah, those meetings happened. And then lastly, the SSA Advisory Committee, which is the Scholarships and Student Aid Office Advisory Committee meetings, those happened, or the last meeting for that happened on February 18th. And I think we're expecting one more for the semester. And that's it for my report. I stand for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions on the report of the VP Student Life? Seeing none, we'll move on to the last item on the agenda, the report from the VP External. VP External.
Sorry, just getting to my microphone. Okay, yeah, thank you. Parliamentarian, could you zoom in a bit, please? Thank you very much. Okay, so beginning with external affairs, on federal political affairs, UCRU has met twice as usual. both the Board of Directors and the Advocacy Committee. With respect to the Board of Directors, we approved UCRI's federal pre-budget submission to the federal government for its budget consultations. I think I already mentioned this last time that we were going to. That was being drafted within the Advocacy Committee. Secondly, climate emergency polling is underway. Please share that with your constituents just so that the survey can get more feedback from the McGill population. So the Advocacy Committee met as well. That was last week. There's just ongoing work on some of the policy papers that we actually got to take a look at today at board. So moving on to provincial and municipal affairs. On Saturday was a meeting of the Inter-Associatif. I wasn't able to make it, unfortunately, because I was unwell, but it seemed like a fairly lively discussion, although nothing necessarily binding took place there. But yeah, there was discussion on various propositions, including government regulation of academic speech and pedagogy, the future of education after the COVID pandemic, the ecological crisis, and others. Also, just for information, on Monday, the municipal, the city council adopted a motion to support the regularization of people without status. So that's just something that goes in line with our position on institutions of public safety. So important to note. Onto political research and infrastructure. The main thing is progress on the policy framework for international students. So Bradley, who you met earlier, just submitted to me 30 pages of policy information about international students, which is very exciting. I'm reviewing that still, and it's just going to be some great information that we can use when we have our public assembly in March. And then, yes, a bit more review between the two of us of the Censé Electoral Reform proposal that we discussed earlier today. Onto community affairs, the Affordable Student Housing Committee met last week. We mainly went over the event that was took place on Tuesday. We met again to discuss that on Monday, and then it happened on Tuesday. I've already spoken about it. Then on Monday evening, I attended a meeting of the Push Fund, or the Fonds Clé, which is the third organization that's part of the SMU and UTIL contract to develop affordable student housing for McGill students. So the Push Fund is the Push Fund. Well, yeah, I sit on the board of the Push Fund, and yeah, there were just some activities, board activities that happened. So yeah, we can move down. So yeah, Milton Park and Peter at McGill. There was a lot of activity relating to a probationary evaluation for CPT. I submitted a letter of support for an SPF application regarding a project in line with our advocacy on the Royal Victoria Hospital. So this was just an application to get funding for consultation and feasibility studies of the Royal Victoria Hospital by a number of community organizations, part of the coalition, and the Community Engagement Committee met last Thursday. And with respect to political campaigns, there's not really much to update. A couple of meetings with reps from MCAP and Divest McGill to discuss campaign updates. It was actually the same person representing both, but yeah. Union affairs, yeah, again, just ongoing conversations with the Muse on the residence evictions, and the executives met with the full fellow earlier to discuss that in more detail earlier this week. We can go down a bit. So yeah, communications drafted a statement regarding unhoused populations that you all received. a number of the execs met with the communications staff to review SMU website menus last week. Finance and HR related things. The Black Affairs Commissioner, the VP Finance, and I met with the BSN to discuss funding for the Black Affairs Commissioner. Oh, yes, the External Affairs Coordinator and the Community Affairs Commissioner began work last week. We've been having a few onboarding meetings. That's going very nicely. Shout out to Valerie, who I think is still here in this council session, and similarly with the Black Affairs Commissioner. Just ordinary check-ins with other staff, help finalize the External Affairs budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Thank you to the VP Finance. And yeah, just I mentioned last time that I was responsible for kind of coordinating and funding the anti-associative facilitation and animation and translation teams rather. Moving down a bit onto governance, help revise the divestment motion that just passed at council and help prepare it for the GA. Advocated unsuccessfully or very unsuccessfully for the ratification of the policy on harmful military technology last week. So it's coming back to council, was reviewed by steering last week. We'll talk about it in a couple of weeks. Yeah, check-ins with the governance manager to discuss that and other things. And then a couple of interviews and other meetings. So that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Are there any individuals with questions on the report? Recognizing none, we'll move on to the last item on the agenda, item 15, adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, please. So moved.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Wan and VP University Affairs. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, we'll come to adjournment at 21:30.
Sorry, point of order. Was that Councillor Wan or Councillor Awan?
Councillor Wan.
Thank you.
Nice work, everyone. Get some rest.